Chapter 684. Cough cough. Sister Ting, start working. There will be more and more cultivators pouring in, but most of them should be from our division, so there's no need to worry. Little Shui and I will stand guard for you, hee hee. Qin Hao pulled Qin Shui into his arms and changed the topic. It couldn't be helped. Qin Hao was ashamed of his inferiority to such a man. He didn't dare to say that there was a huge gap between them, but there was still a gap of a few streets. Whether Qin Hao admitted it or not, he was so disdainful of Bailey Ningbing and had no feelings for her. More or less, it was because Bailey Ningbing was already Dongfang Han's Taoist companion in name. How could he, who was arrogant and overbearing, accept a woman who had a Taoist companion contract with someone else and overbearingly threatened him to be her Taoist companion? Similarly, Qin Hao would never accept a young girl like Pan Donglu who would easily fall in love. This was a matter of men's dignity, and it was something that most men insisted on. And this was precisely the reason why Qin Hao couldn't answer Qin Shui and Long Ting directly. He was in the wrong. Qin Shui and Long Ting also turned their heads and didn't look anymore. The reason was very simple. The emotional Pan Dong Xing and Pan Dong Lu had already stuck together intimately. Although it wasn't inappropriate for children, the two women didn't have the hobby of peeping at others. Of course, Qin Shui and Long Ting didn't continue to make things difficult for Qin Hao on this issue. Inside the enchantment they could clearly see and sense the scene outside the enchantment. But Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Xing outside the enchantment obviously couldn't sense Qin Hao and the other two. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a touching soap opera. Long Ting pouted gloomily when she saw Qin Hao and Qin Shui's leisurely appearances. This won't do. Both of you must comprehend it as well. Otherwise, I won't teach it to both of you. This is what you said to me earlier. The situation is different. You comprehended it in minutes. It's obviously your opportunity. Besides, your speed is so fast. We didn't comprehend anything and went to the next level, right? Be good, start quickly, brother will reward you with a kiss. Bah. Coaxing me as a child. I won't fall for it. Long Ting raised her fist and said. But after speaking she still punched the second barrier. What's wrong? Seeing Long Ting's surprised expression, Qin Hao and Qin Shui were puzzled. Try again. Long Ting still did not explain. Boom. After that, when Qin Hao and Qin Shuejuan attacked the barrier, they once again understood why Long Ting was acting strangely. It was because they obtained nothing. Looks like this second test isn't about the physical body, essence, energy and Jinyuan but something else. Let's try attacking in other ways. Yes. Chi chi chi. The three of them attacked at the same time. Qin Hao condensed a pure spiritual attack and pointed out with a finger, penetrating the barrier like a cold star. On the other hand, Qin Shui stabbed out with her sword, her destruction sword will condensed within it. Long Ting was still using her fists, but this time she used the profound mysteries of an absolute art. It was not a pure physical attack. Rumble. 3 explosions were heard. It's mind. When the three of them looked at each other, Qin Hao said with great certainty, try using pure mind power and mind power to attack. After Qin Shui and Long Ting launched a pure spiritual attack, their minds suddenly seemed to have hit the first barrier, and an obscure spell appeared. This time Long Ting frowned directly. Just by feeling she found that she could not understand it at all. It seemed to be completely beyond the scope of her understanding. However, after frowning slightly, a trace of joy appeared on her face and she said, Brother Hao Xiao Shui, I'm not slacking off. I haven't practiced any magic arts that are pure mind power and mind power. You know that I mainly cultivate my physical body, and I can't understand the magic arts that I've obtained now. Haha. Try your best. Don't look at me like that, I'm serious this time. Chi chi. In less than 2 hours another cultivator arrived first. Then every half an hour or two a cultivator arrived. Without exception, all of them were cultivators from the master of the East Flow. Although they were all small soldiers like Qin Hao, their strength was obviously at the peak of the late stage of the Earth celestial stage. Moreover, just by looking at their equipment one could tell that their identities were definitely not ordinary. Even if their strength was weak and they did not obtain the position of squad leader or captain, with the help of their best spiritual treasure sets and the hidden holy artifacts, their combat strength was abruptly raised by 2 levels. When these people came in they found the Pan Dong Flow and Pan Dong Xing. As people from the East Flow city who didn't know the Pan Dong Flow. In other words, who didn't know Pan Dong Xing who had disappeared for 10 years. However, when they saw the Pandong Flow and Pandong Xing sitting together cross-legged, these cultivators were surprised. She was the goddess in their hearts. She was indeed Pandong Xing's childhood sweetheart, and others envied her. But the Pandong Flow was already together with Qinlin, a powerful disciple of the Knights Templar. How could she be together with Pandong Xing at this moment? Moreover, Pandong Xing's soul was seriously injured and he was definitely a fallen genius of the East Flow city. After disappearing for 10 years, Pandong Xing seemed to have completely recovered and was not worse than the current Pandong Flow. Although this surprised them, they were also sure that Pandong Xing's ancestor must have paid a great price. However, no matter how they looked at it, the gap between his aura and Qinlin was too big. How could the Pandong Flow turn back? They were puzzled. But no one dared to come forward and ask. The status of the Pan family in the East Flow city was unshakable. Even if their current strength was not worse than the Pandong Flow and Pandong Xing, they were at the peak of the late stage of the Earth Celestial stage, while the others were at the peak of the early stage of the Earth Celestial stage. Their potential was not something they could compare with. After nodding slightly to greet them, they began to study the barrier excitedly. Moreover, no one deliberately stayed away. Instead, they all gathered not far away. After all, they were all from the East Flow city. As long as there was no fierce competition, it was safer to stay together. Those who could come in were all smart people. Even if they didn't know the mystery of the barrier, after probing or looking at others, they would soon discover the mystery and enter a state of comprehension. They were all safe and sound. But a few hours later, a streamer arrived as fast as lightning. The person was still in the void, but the terrifying aura and pressure emitted from his body made everyone who was in the state of comprehension raise their heads in surprise. The Pandong Flow who was in the state of comprehension did not raise her head at all. Her delicate body trembled and her heart thumped. Qinlin? When Pandong Xing sensed the powerful aura, he seemed to have sensed something. When he saw the person coming, his face sank. Two sharp lights flashed in his eyes. He immediately looked at Fan Donglu, whose face instantly turned pale. Hot-headed, he stretched out his hand and stopped Fan Donglu, who was very close to him, by his side. The Pandong Flow didn't say why it broke up with Qinlin and he didn't ask, but he knew that Qinlin must have wronged the Pandong Flow and bullied it. Otherwise, the Pandong Flow who had established their relationship had no reason to turn back because of him. After all, if it wanted to turn back, it would have done so when he just came back. Why would it wait until now? East. In the void, Qinlin's majestic perception had spread out. When he saw the powerful spirit boundary, he showed excitement. Obviously, no one had obtained the inheritance of the sect ruins yet. So, since he was here, who dared to compete with him? When he breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the cultivators who had arrived, he saw a familiar figure. When he saw it, he was surprised but also surprised. After all, in order to obtain greater benefits, he temporarily abandoned the Pandong Flow. It was not that he didn't like the Pandong Flow, but it was a trade-off. At this moment he was surprised to see it, but at least he was pleasantly surprised. However, as soon as he shouted the word east, he saw the young man beside him holding the waist of the Pandong Lu and pulling him closer. Bastard! At this moment, Qinlin was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He was furious. Someone actually dared to touch my Qinlin's woman? Without any hesitation he angrily attacked. He didn't think much about the reason why the young man touched his woman, but his woman didn't seem to resist. Boom. Fan Dongxing didn't expect Qinlin to be so hot-tempered. They had broken up, but he comforted the Pandong Flow. What did it have to do with Qinlin? Fan Dongxing's thought was also simple. Intuitively, he thought that Qinlin had dumped the Pandong Flow, so at this moment when Qinlin came, he naturally knew how the Pandong Flow felt. He held her to his side just to comfort her. As for the hatred in his heart for Qinlin, although he would get it back sooner or later, it was not now. Because he knew that at this moment he was far from being Qinlin's opponent. However, since Qinlin attacked directly, why should he hesitate? Stop. At this moment the Pandong Flow suddenly stood up. With a whoosh, she stood in front of Fan Dongxing and shouted at Qinlin. At the same time she violently activated her power and combined it with Fan Dongxing's attack to resist Qinlin's angry blow. What? Qinlin couldn't believe his eyes. The Pandong Flow was helping a man to resist him? Was this still the obedient and well-behaved flowing eastward current? Originally he wanted to stop, but at this moment, under the intense anger, his eyes flashed with ruthlessness. Not only did he not stop, but his mind also pushed his attack to the limit. Even the flowing eastward school who had stolen a man behind his back, gnashed his teeth in hatred. This was an absolute humiliation, a naked humiliation. As an outstanding disciple of the Holy Temple, if it was known that the woman who had confirmed her relationship with him was intimate with another man behind his back, and when she was discovered she even attacked him with both hands, where would he put his face? That was an absolute humiliation. A humiliation he had never encountered in his life. Pan Dongflo, get out of the way. Rumble. Under the terrifying pressure, it was already impossible to dodge, but Fan Dongxing used all his strength to push Fan Donglu out. His whole body burst out with incomparably bright light. Instead of retreating, he violently moved forward to meet Qinlin's attack. For the Pan Dongflo, what was there to be afraid of? Chapter 685. Boom. Rumble. Puff. The attack of Fan Dongxing and Fan Donglu was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot in front of Qinlin's move. It was directly destroyed. The terrifying energy directly shook Fan Dongxing and sent him flying. While he was still in the air, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Brother Dongxing. Fan Dongxing, who was forcibly pushed away by Fan Dongxing, suddenly screamed in horror. He flew up in a panic and caught Fan Dongxing. Bang! The two of them slammed heavily into the seven-colored barrier. Just the impact of the impact was enough to break the seven-colored barrier. However, under the seven-colored barrier's abnormal recovery ability, the two of them rolled to the edge of the barrier together. Brother Dongxing. Fan Donglu held Fan Dongxing, whose face was as pale as a sheet of paper. It was obvious that Qinlin's violent energy had entered his body. He shouted with fear and worry. His tears were like broken beads. He suddenly turned to look at the aggressive Qinlin and said, "Why? Why do you want to kill me? Kill me. Kill me as well. Bitch. You ask me why. I want to ask you, what's going on between you and him? How long have I been separated from you? Give me an explanation. Otherwise you will all die." With a wave of his hand, Qinlin once again sent out two streams of powerful energy, which directly condensed into two rope-like runes shining with bright golden light. They entangled and separated the two. Looking at the furious Qinlin with a twisted expression, Flowing East Flow's face turned pale when he heard the other party's words, but his eyes became firmer. He also understood that his decision was right. Say it. Bitch, why don't you say it? Without any warning, Qinlin appeared in front of Pan Donglu and slapped him mercilessly in the face. Pan Donglu, who was imprisoned, was unable to resist and did not think about resisting. A clear palm print appeared on his snow-white face and blood flowed from the corners of his mouth. At this moment, all the practitioners who had stepped into the sect ruins were watching this scene in silence. No one dared to stop or persuade. You don't want to talk? Do you want to die? I'll fulfill your wish. What do you want me to say? I was wrong first. I took the initiative to get close to you. If you want to kill me, kill me. This has nothing to do with him. Flowing East looked at Qinlin and said, Bitch, you're still protecting him? 10 years ago I belonged to him. It was because of his departure and my obsession that I fell for you. What I want is someone who treats me with sincerity, not someone who would abandon me for a little benefit. You're obsessed with me. Abandon you? Bitch, why don't you tell me how I can abandon you? Didn't I tell you? I'm sorry. I've never forced anyone to do anything. You've made it clear, but it doesn't mean that I can accept it. You can leave on your own for some benefits now, but in the future you can also abandon me for benefits. Good. I'm giving you a chance to be my woman. I can spare his worthless life. Otherwise all of you will die. No one can betray me and no one can challenge my dignity. Cough. At this moment Fan Dongxing finally suppressed the violent energy of Qinlin's attack. He coughed out 2 mouthfuls of blood and opened his eyes. His eyes were full of monstrous hatred and suffocation. Flowing East, promise him. Promise. You want me to promise him? Flowing East. I don't deserve you. Fan Dongxing lowered his head. His mouth was full of blood, which was the blood of serious injuries and the blood of biting. Facing the powerful Qinlin, he believed that if Flowing East didn't promise him, the other party would definitely kill him and Flowing East. It didn't matter if he died, but he couldn't let Flowing East die. therefore he could only say so. Even if Flowing East mistakenly thought that he had surrendered, that he was a person who lived without purpose. Flowing East stared at Fan Dongxing, his lips trembling. Immediately, the expression on his face became extremely indifferent, as if he had lost all interest in life in an instant. Well, I promise him. I won't let you die. I won't. Speaking of this, Flowing East suddenly looked at Qinlin and said, Wait. When I said yes, I didn't just say yes. Soul contract, bring it out for me. You. Fan Dongxing suddenly became furious, but he just said you and couldn't go on. Okay, Qi. Flowing East's face was pale and there was no emotion in his eyes. Hearing Qinlin's words, he directly responded. At the same time, his spirit suddenly burst out and his primordial spirit came out of his body saying, Flowing East, stupid. Without any warning, a terrible pressure, accompanied by a powerful divine thought, suddenly appeared, and in an instant Flowing East's primordial spirit was forced back into his body. Stupid woman, what's wrong with your head? To think that my brother would live and die for you like this. He can block a spear for you. Block death for you. Would he let you promise him for his own life? You're really an idiot. Dongxing, get up, I want to see who dares to touch you. Dazzling, dark green origin energy immediately enveloped Fan Dongxing. Before Fan Dongxing could react to what was going on, a spiritual fruit exuding a majestic aura of life was stuffed into his mouth. At the same time, Fan Dongxing heard the voice transmission from the person who had come. Although he did not understand, he was not stupid. He instantly looked at the person who had come and asked in surprise, Big brother, why have you come? Don't worry about why I'm here. I'm catching chickens for your IQ. This stupid woman's brain is full of water. You don't even understand what I'm doing. Is it worth it? Big brother. It's worth it. Fan Dongxing looked at Qin Hao blankly and then said firmly, for her, anything is worth it. It doesn't matter whether she understands or not. Qin Hao? It's Qin Hao. When the surrounding practitioners saw the sudden appearance of the figure, they all widened their eyes in surprise. They were surprised that Qin Hao dared to get involved in this mess, and they were even more surprised by Qin Hao's silent appearance. This was because they didn't sense any aura at all. Qin Hao just appeared out of thin air between Qinlin, Fan Donglu and Fan Dongxing. To be exact, he stood in front of Qinlin. The majestic and terrifying pressure, the aura of his body spirit, and Qi surprised these guys who had long known that Qin Hao ranked first in the Donglu division. Because, at this moment, Qin Hao was stronger than Qinlin in terms of aura alone. After hearing Qin Hao's words, they suddenly understood why Qin Hao would meddle in this matter. Fan Dongxing, who had disappeared for 10 years without any news and was regarded as a fallen genius, was actually Qin Hao's brother. Moreover, their relationship seemed to be extraordinary. Qin Hao, after being scolded, even an idiot would understand what Qin Hao was talking about. When she heard Fan Dongxing's heartfelt words, she felt ashamed. She had decided to surrender and compromise to let Fan Dongxing survive, and then choose the time to end her life. At this time, the hope of living was rekindled in her heart. She was grateful to Qin Hao, who had once moved her and still moved her heart. Immediately she looked at Fan Dongxing in a daze. At the same time, Qinlin, who had been waiting to enjoy the fruits of victory and then ravage Fan Donglu, who had been defined as a bitch by him, was also shocked by Qin Hao's sudden appearance and his majestic and terrifying aura. For a moment he didn't know whether he was afraid or wanted to see what was going on. In short, he was affected by Qin Hao's aura and didn't make a sound for a full minute. He didn't react until Qin Hao broke the restriction formation he had condensed and Fan Donglu threw herself into Fan Dongxing's arms. His face suddenly turned red and he fumed. Qin Hao. A furious voice burst out from Qinlin's mouth like thunder. His aura at this moment exploded with a rumbling sound, like thunder on dry land. Brother Qinlin, calm down. How about giving me face? It was also at this time that Qin Hao turned to look at Qinlin. He looked respectful and humble, clasped his hands and said, Who do you think you are? Give you face. If your woman betrays you, I also ask you to give me face. Will you give me face or not? Qinlin said angrily. Qin Hao's aura was indeed very strong, but it didn't mean that he was strong. As one of the best disciples of the Knights Temple, he had a unique advantage. He had the most powerful unique skills of the human clan, a sacred tool temporarily borrowed from the Knights Temple, and sacred tools and elixirs provided by his family. How could he be frightened by a boy of humble origin who was not from any top sect and had no background? What's more, if he gave up now, he would become a laughingstock in the cultivation world. If his woman betrayed him and he couldn't get justice, it would be an absolute disgrace, a disgrace for a lifetime. Accepting Fan Donglu as a slave was the only way to save face. Oh, since you don't give me face, then let's talk with strength. However, I have to make one thing clear first. First, in the future, don't deceive girls like Fan Donglu, who are new to love and not very smart. Because as long as they find out that the love they yearn for is not what they originally imagined, they will leave you, especially after seeing your true face now. Second, my woman will never betray me because I never accept any woman easily. I accept them with sincerity. Although I have many women, they are all my only. Qin Hao said righteously, but his words were a little mushy. Obviously, this guy was not talking to Qin Lin at all, but to Qin Shui and Long Ting, who had forced him to come out and help. Damn, even he was a little jealous. Fan Dongxing was such a good man that even his own wife was moved to protect him. Chapter 686. You're courting death. I'd like to see what strength you have to stop me. Boom. A majestic and terrifying aura swept across the area like a surging tsunami. The surrounding cultivators were unable to withstand it. Under the aura, their souls trembled. Their essence, qi and spirit surged, shaking the void. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth surged. At this moment, Qin Lin's body shone with a dense light, making everyone unable to see his face clearly. The rolling clouds covered the sky and the sun, shrouding the firmament. A divine artifact. Everyone was shocked by the terrifying aura. Even though everyone who could make it to the ruins of the sect was an expert, they felt suffocated under the terrifying aura of Qin Lin's sacred weapon, let alone fight him. Who could stop such a powerful aura? Qi. Without any hesitation, the practitioners who were close to Qin Lin quickly retreated. They were horrified. The disciples of the divine temples, especially the top disciples of the divine temples, were beyond their imagination. Big brother. Seeing this, Fan Dongxing, who was recovering his essence, qi and spirit at an amazing speed, suddenly stood up. Fan Dongxing was no stranger to Qin Hao's name. When Qin Hao ranked first in the East Flow City, he knew about him. However, this was the first time he had seen Qin Hao. He didn't understand why Qin Hao would help him and Fan Donglu. Qin Hao had healed him with the pure and vigorous power of the origin wood and given him a priceless spiritual fruit. Qin Hao had given him a new lease of life, not to mention that Qin Hao didn't hesitate to offend an outstanding disciple of the divine temples. Even though Fan Dongxing could sense that Qin Hao's aura was extremely terrifying and even more powerful than Qin Lin's, Qin Hao was only at the peak of the Earth's celestial stage after all. If Fan Dongxing allowed Qin Hao to fight Fan Dongxing and be injured or even killed, he couldn't accept it. What's more, Qin Hao's aura had directly drowned Qin Hao. However, as soon as Fan Dongxing opened his mouth, Qin Hao waved his hand to stop him. An invisible force wrapped him and Fan Donglu, and with a swish they were thrown far away. Right at this moment, two auras suddenly escaped from the seven-colored barrier. Long Ting and Qin Hao, one on the left and one on the right, appeared beside Qin Hao. Their expressions were solemn. Obviously, they didn't expect Qin Lin to erupt with such a terrifying aura. An aura that exceeded their expectations. Long Ting, Qin Xiaobai, are you going with him? Seeing this scene, Qin Lin's expression became even more gloomy and terrifying, and his eyes were frightening. All of you back off. To everyone's surprise, Qin Hao actually once again sent out two strands of profound energy, which similarly enveloped Qin Shui and Long Ting. Moreover, the two of them were not allowed to resist as they were sent far away. If Pan Donglu and Pan Dongxing had been sent out just now, everyone could understand. After all, their strength was obviously inferior to Qin Hao's. However, Long Ting and Qin Hao were both disciples of the Knights Templars, and each of them had a terrifying aura, but they still could not break free from Qin Hao's powerful strength. I haven't fought for a long time, Kacha. Qin Hao, whose expression hadn't changed in the slightest from the beginning until the end, stared at Qin Lin, who was like a god, as he spoke indifferently. Qin Hao looked extremely weak, as if his thin body was swaying in the wind, but at this moment, along with his voice, the clear sound of his tendons, meridians and bones colliding abruptly sounded out. His expression, posture, and the sudden increase in his physical strength, energy, and spirit caused the depressed Xianxia and Long Ting to be dumbstruck as they opened their eyes wide, and their little mouths formed an O shape. Especially Long Ting. Among her peers, no matter who she faced, Long Ting was full of confidence in her physical strength. Even if it was Qin Hao whose physical strength was equally abnormal, Long Ting believed that Qin Hao was inferior to her in terms of physical strength. But at this moment, that majestic blood qi, like an eruption of a mountain torrent, made Long Ting clearly feel how terrifying the physical strength contained in Qin Hao's body was. Of course, the reason why she was so surprised was that in the past 12 years, they could be said to have been together all the time. Occasionally when they fought, every time she showed her violent physical strength, it was always Qin Hao who admitted defeat and begged for mercy. But now she understood that it was Qin Hao's special love, a love that he doted on her. When Xianxia looked at Long Ting and Long Ting also looked at Xianxia, the corners of this girl's mouth curled up and she laughed foolishly. However, the happiness and sweetness brimming with her expression was not concealed in the slightest. Boom. Rumble. Qin Hao slowly rose into the air. Both of them hadn't made a move, yet the auras they emitted collided with each other, causing the spirit energy in the surroundings of 50 kilometers to rumble and explode. At this moment, Qin Lin's originally furious appearance had already vanished, and it was replaced by a heavy expression. He knew that he'd underestimated Qin Hao's strength in the end, and just based on the aura Qin Hao emanated at this moment without utilizing any magic treasures, he couldn't help but become heavy. As a genius disciple amongst the disciples of the Divine Palace, he'd experienced countless horrifying battles and life and death battles all along the way, so how could he be disturbed by his own emotions at this moment? He knew very well that Qin Hao, who was of lowly birth and didn't have the backing of any top sex, possessed such terrifying strength and heaven-defying natural talent. So Qin Hao was surely the darling of the heavens and the earth that gathered great karmic luck. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible for Qin Hao to be so strong. Similarly, with such karmic luck, how could Qin Hao not possess a formidable magic treasure? But Qin Hao hadn't utilized it until now, so could it be that Qin Hao was so confident that he could defeat Qin Lin? So strong. Is he still at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth celestial stage? Incredible. Qin Hao hasn't activated any magic treasure, yet he's so strong. If he had a divine artifact, Qin Lin may not be his opponent. What's the possibility? That's for sure. Don't forget, Qin Hao's combat power is higher than Qin Lin's. Besides, didn't you see the relationship between the two beauties of the Divine Palace and Qin Hao? If he didn't have any strength, how could he conquer such heavenly beauties? And both of them are together. Phew. Anyway, today's battle has been an eye-opener for us. It's definitely a battle between the top geniuses of our vast universe galaxy. The two stared at each other and their spirit and fighting spirit soared. No one dared to make a move. Qinlin, how about we stop here? You've lost and this matter is over. Don't say that Pan Dong Lu and you haven't become true cultivation companions yet. Even if you do, she has the right to choose. A man's dignity is not something that can be obtained by forcing a woman to do something. You win and I won't intervene in this matter. You can do whatever you want and I'll pretend I didn't see anything. Qin Hao suddenly spoke first. What qualifications do you have to negotiate with me? Since you dare to intervene in my affairs, you should be prepared to die here. Qin Lin stared at Qin Hao and said coldly. There was no anger, but his killing intent was awe-inspiring, and his will was indestructible. This was a necessary psychological quality when facing an opponent of equal strength. Moreover, although he suppressed his anger and put himself in the best fighting state, it didn't mean that he wasn't angry with Qin Hao for interfering. It was just that he had condensed all his anger into his aura and pressure. In that case, let's fight first. Qin Hao blasted out a punch. It had to be said that Qin Hao didn't have any killing intent when facing Qin Lin. First, Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Xing had nothing to do with him. He just came out to mediate because of the goodwill of Qin Shuai and Long Ting. Unfortunately, in Qin Lin's eyes, he didn't have enough weight. Second, although Qin Lin went overboard, but if it was anyone else who encountered such a situation, they would probably go overboard, and it was understandable. Third, Qin Lin was a genius disciple of the Sacred Hall, and was also the teacher of the primitive mystic realm. He had already interfered, and there was no reason to kill him. Fourth, the current Qin Hao was no longer the Qin Hao of the past. He deeply understood what it meant to be forced by circumstances. Putting aside his identity as a Sacred Hall disciple, Qin Lin also had a strong family background. If he killed the young and the old, even if Qin Hao wasn't afraid, what about the people around Qin Hao? A disciple of the Valley of Happiness had already forced him to the point that he would die in the 10-year battle, not to mention Qin Lin's background. Qin Hao had no reason to be involved in such trouble. So he could only lose and not kill. Qin Lin snorted and struck out with his palm. Rumble. In an instant, a huge hand that covered the sky formed and countless golden runes flowed within it. The surrounding thick heaven and earth origin energy was absorbed, and the laws of heaven and earth seemed to solidify and all light and sound disappeared. Law domain? As expected of a Sacred Hall disciple, his attack is extraordinary. Looks like this battle will be very satisfying. Sensing that his attack seemed to have fallen into an endless abyss, and that Qin Lin had directly cut off his connection, Qin Hao was slightly surprised but also excited. Ever since he returned from the Mystic Ice region, whether it was the second world or the real world, he had not fought. After entering the primitive mystic realm, other than cultivating, exploring and searching for treasures, he had occasionally messed around with the two girls. He had no chance to fight to his heart's content and had long been bored out of his mind. Qin Lin's first palm strike was so exquisite, directly sealing the laws and cutting off the connection between him and his divine sense, which made him excited. Break for me. Qin Hao used the finger-guessing game as a finger and condensed his finger as a sword. His majestic divine thoughts immediately surged and condensed at the tip of his finger, causing his sword finger to emit a bright crystal light. With a point, a crystal light that was completely condensed from psyche power shot toward the giant hand that covered the sky. At the same time, what shocked Qin Lin and the spectators was that Qin Hao did not retreat, and instead, directly turned into a ray of light towards the huge hand. You're courting death. Rumble. Qin Lin's violent energy immediately surged into the huge hand. He knew very well that Qin Hao had definitely attacked the only weakness of his law domain by doing so. If not, Qin Hao's attack would lose its dominance and turn into scattered energy. But for Qin Hao to do so, the prerequisite was that his absolute power was much stronger than his, and he had to have the strength to disperse his law domain. Otherwise, when he entered his law domain, he would indeed be able to control his own power, but he would fall into a completely passive state. In other words, he who was outside the giant hand was in an invincible position before Qin Hao destroyed his law domain. If this was not courting death, then what was? Chapter 687. After all, a strong aura didn't necessarily mean that one's combat capability was strong. It could only reflect one's combat capability to a certain extent. As long as the aura and coercion of both sides couldn't suppress each other and couldn't interfere with each other's mind, they would have to rely on real combat skills and strength to determine the winner. In Qin Lin's view, although Qin Hao's aura was stronger than his, it didn't affect him at all. In particular, Qin Hao was just at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth Celestial stage, which was 2 stages lower than him. Big brother. Fan Dongxing, who was watching from afar, exclaimed. At first it was awkward to call him Big Brother, but after a few times he had become familiar with the fake Big Brother. Although he couldn't compete with Qin Hao's strength, he still had basic insight. When he saw what Qin Hao had done, how could he not be frightened? He was a typical good man. At this moment he was completely concerned about Qin Hao, his big brother to whom he owed a lot. He didn't think that if Qin Hao lost, he and the Pandong school would face the end. Brother Dongxing, don't worry. However, to Fan Dongxing's surprise, the Pandong school, who was watching the battle in the distance, whispered. There was no worry in her eyes, but a glimmer of excitement. Fan Dongxing was slightly stunned when he saw her like this. This is Brother Cold Blood. Brother Qin Hao's favorite way of fighting, Brother Cold Blood? When I met Brother Qin Hao, he used the alias Cold Blood. I later learned that Qin Hao was Brother Cold Blood. Oh, no wonder Brother Qin Hao helped us. It turns out that he knew you. Fan Dongxing suddenly understood and said. Qin Hao had told him in secret that if he wanted to help him, he had to have a valid reason. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for him to intervene. After all, Qin Lin was not an unpardonable person. The emotional swaying of the Pandong gang was indeed a slap in the face for any man. No one could calm down. Of course, the reason why Qin Hao intervened was not entirely because Long Ting and Qin Shui had asked him to help. Instead, it was because Qin Hao did not have a good impression of Qin Lin. After all, Qin Lin had feelings for Long Ting before. It was just that he did not go overboard, so Qin Hao could not flare up. Doesn't Big Brother Qin Hao know you? Hearing Fan Dongxing's voice transmission, Fan Donglu was surprised. No. I've never met Big Brother Qin Hao before. Even his name was on the combat power ranking. When Big Brother Qin Hao came to help us, he told me to call him Big Brother and find a reason to help us. Fan Dongxing said. Hearing Fan Dongxing's words, Fan Donglu was so surprised that she was speechless. She thought that Qin Hao might really have intervened because of her, as Fan Dongxing had said. However, looking at Fan Dongxing beside her, she did not dare to think too much. A man who was willing to die for her, who knew her enemy well, who had grown up with her, who had recovered from his soul injury, and whose talent was not inferior to hers, what was there to be dissatisfied with? Boom, boom, boom. In the void, Qin Lin was frantically urging his energy to maintain the giant hand, but it was flying everywhere in the sky and on the ground. Anything that came into contact with the destructive energy would be turned into dust, but no one could see Qin Hao, who had already entered the giant hand. This scene looked a bit funny, as if Qin Lin had gone crazy and was venting alone, but no one laughed. Because everyone knew clearly how powerful and terrifying the attacks Qin Hao had to endure within the restrictions of the laws of Qin Lin's enormous hand. Although no one could see it, they could tell from Qin Lin's appearance that he was frantically attacking Qin Hao under this absolute advantage. I'd like to see how long you can last. Infernal mystical fire. Burn it for me. The raging orchid profound fire surged out from Qin Lin's palm. At this moment, the world was abruptly set ablaze by the surging heat. In an instant, the origin energy within a radius of 1,000 miles was ignited, burned, and madly condensed. Moreover, it poured into the giant hand, causing the entire hand to flicker with dark blue flames. At this moment, Pan Donglu, Pan Dongxing, and many other onlookers cried out in surprise. Ninefold mystical fire. Basically, only heaven immortal experts could control the ninefold mystical fire. Qin Hao was already in the law domain, and now that he was being burned by the ninefold mystical fire, everyone broke out in a cold sweat just thinking about it. If they put themselves in his shoes, no one present thought that they could withstand it. After all, since Qin Lin had released the ninefold mystical fire, it was definitely not just the space of the ninefold mystical fire, but a divine power formed by the ninefold mystical fire. How powerful would it be in the law domain? Moreover, Qin Hao could not avoid it. However, seeing this scene, Qin Shuai and Long Ting looked at each other strangely, feeling sorry for Qin Lin. If this was not displaying one's slight skill in front of an expert, what was? Qin Hao, who had inherited the mystical fire, might have been a threat to Qin Hao before he entered the primitive secret land. But no. Qin Hao had already mastered the mystical fire, and his use of the mystical fire was incomparable to that of ordinary people. In the endless void, the blue flames covered the sky and the sun. The surrounding cultivators, under the terrifying heat of the ninefold mystical fire, did not retreat. Instead, they activated their protective upstanding qi, as they could not bear to miss this battle that symbolized the peak of the Earth's celestial stage of the human clan. At this moment, within a radius of thousands of miles, almost 10,000 miles, it was completely blue. Every cultivator's face was painted blue, and it looked indescribably strange. When the ninefold mystical fire covered the sky, everyone was breaking out in a cold sweat for Qin Hao, who was in the giant hand that covered the sky. A brilliant sword radiance, which penetrated the giant hand that covered the sky, suddenly shot out. The sword radiance was pitch black, and it contained terrifying energy and a destructive aura. It directly tore the surrounding space, which contained the powerful law of heaven, apart. Circles of black ripples appeared, and a sharp sonic boom resounded through heaven and earth, penetrating people's hearts. Break. Rumble. A strand of Qin Hao's dark flame that was even more dark blue and crystalline had even condensed into numerous talisman markings that flowed around his body. Along with his clear and resounding shout, the enormous hand that covered the sky collapsed and charged into the sky, and it was like an azure blue waterfall that tore through space. Under the astounded gazes of everyone present, Qin Hao turned around and slashed out with his sword towards Qin Lin, who'd already arrived below. Rumble. In an instant, the sword radiance bloomed like a thunderbolt, and then it exploded with a thunder-like explosion. It was accompanied by a majestic energy pressure that surged out. The terrifying destructive sword light forcefully tore apart the dark blue profound flame that filled the air. The black color that represented destruction poured out from the dark blue light screen and spread out, causing the entire heaven and earth to sink into darkness. What was black was the sky and what was dark was the heart. Even Qin Shui, Long Ting, Pan Donglu, Pan Dongxing, and the other onlookers were shocked at this moment, as if the end of the world had arrived. What a terrifying destruction sword essence. It's so far away but my mind is affected. It's too terrifying. If I bear the brunt of such a sword essence attack, I won't have the strength to fight back at all. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the destructive sword radiance that Qin Hao emitted in the void. It was like a black waterfall that covered the earth and they were all shocked. Little Shui, he also gave in to you. When Long Ting saw this scene, she was also extremely surprised, but she looked at Qin Shui and transmitted her voice. Her strongest point was her physical strength. In the past 12 years she had fought many times. Once she broke out with her strongest physical strength, Qin Hao would definitely surrender obediently. Once Qin Shui broke out with an increasingly powerful destruction sword essence, Qin Hao would also obediently be punished. This was the happiest and proudest thing for the two women. Didn't he give in to you? Qin Shui, who was wearing a blue dress, smiled. She was obviously deceived by Qin Hao just like Long Ting, but a warm current flowed in her heart. How is this possible? At the same level he fell into my law territory. Coupled with the purgatory mystical flame, he's actually safe and sound? Qin Lin was also shocked. He did not expect that Qin Hao, who was only at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth celestial stage, would be so powerful. In Qin Lin's opinion, not to mention Qin Hao, even if it was the top 20 Earth celestial stage experts in the Divine Temple who dared to enter his law territory, he was confident that he could defeat or even kill them with the purgatory mystical flame. Originally, when Qin Hao was relying purely on the law territory, Qin Lin had launched countless attacks, but they were all blocked by Qin Hao, who had extremely fast reactions and powerful combat skills. Therefore he was forced to use one of his strongest techniques, the purgatory mystical flame, which was also the most suitable for the law territory. However, he did not expect that the powerful technique formed by the ninefold mystical flame, which was still within his law territory, would not hurt Qin Hao at all. No wonder you dare to interfere in my affairs. However, you dare to be so arrogant in front of me with just this? Boom. The moment Qin Hao's destructive sword radiance appeared, there was a loud explosion around Qin Lin, and surging energy gushed out from his body. Clang. At the same time, a sword cry that sounded like a dragon's roar tore through the sky, and a treasure light soared into the sky and spread out. In an instant the entire space shook and rippled due to the sword being unsheathed. A divine artifact sword. A divine artifact sword? Regardless of whether it was the onlookers or Qin Hao, they were all shocked. Qin Lin was already wearing a set of powerful divine artifact soft armor, and at this moment he actually wielded a divine artifact sword that was mainly used for attacking. Just this alone was not enough to shock anyone. After all, with Qin Lin's status, there was no reason for him to only possess a divine artifact issued by the Divine Temple. The reason why Qin Hao and the others were shocked was that at this moment, Qin Lin had only drawn the sword out of the sheath, and he had not activated it at all, but the power of the sword itself had already caused the heavens and earth to shake. This meant that Qin Lin had already completely controlled this divine artifact sword. Once it was fully activated, what kind of shocking power would it release? The peak of the initial stage of the Earth celestial stage. You should be proud of yourself for being able to force me to use all my power. Unfortunately, you will definitely die today. Golden Dragon Devour. Roar. Sword radiance, dragon roar, and extremely fierce killing intent that covered the heavens and earth bloomed at the same time. Slaughter Sword Principle. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 688. Slaughter Sword Dao. Slaughter Sword Dao. Qin Hao's pupils constricted. Ever since Qin Hao had fought with Yi Wen Dao of the Eastern Continent, he hadn't fought with an expert who had comprehended the Slaughter Sword Dao. To be precise, it was rare to find someone who had comprehended the Slaughter Sword Dao in the cultivation world. It was just as rare as the Destruction Sword Dao. Because the Slaughter Sword Dao and Destruction Sword Dao were too domineering. Unless one obtained an inheritance, It would be very difficult for an ordinary person, or to be precise, a person with normal emotions, to comprehend them. One had to know that in the world, there was always a trace of life for any ability or law. Nothing was absolute. This was the great change art that deduced the mysteries of the world. However, the Slaughter Sword Dao and Destruction Sword Dao were extreme Daos. The Slaughter Sword Dao was to exterminate the opponent's life force. It was a killing move, a killing move, a killing move, and a killing move that severed all life. The Destruction Sword Dao was even more ruthless. It was to destroy the world, destroy everything. Under normal circumstances, only someone who was extremely stimulated would have such an emotion. It was precisely because of this that not many people could comprehend it. Qin Hao's Sword Dao was obviously inferior to Qin Hao's, but he was using a saint artifact that complemented each other. When he executed it, its might was even more terrifying than the Destruction Sword Dao that Qin Hao had executed. The sword pierced out with a fierce and violent sword aura that dominated the world. It was like a bolt of lightning, and the crisscrossing slaughter intent covered the world and caused one's hair to stand on end. Bang! Rumble! Rumble! The moment the two sword lights of different colors collided, the sword aura swept out and seemed to cut the space into pieces, causing a terrifying explosion. What was even more shocking was that Qin Lin and Qin Hao didn't retreat but advanced instead. The sword lights in their hands flickered as they continuously brandished it. Everywhere they passed, it was as if a string of bombs had been set off. It was extremely terrifying and was approaching at an astonishing speed. At the same time, the energy of the two became more and more condensed and condensed. Humph, instead of retreating, this brat dares to fight me in close combat. He's really seeking his own death. With my golden dragon sacred sword in hand, I can easily cut down a top-grade spirit artifact. How can his sword compete with me? Qin Hao was confident that he would win, and he believed that his combat skills were not inferior to Qin Hao's. Even if he was slightly weaker, he could use his divine weapon to force Qin Hao into a passive state for a short period of time. Ever since I obtained the Secular Sword Dao, I haven't encountered the Massacre Sword Dao. Now that I've encountered it, I can make use of this opportunity to comprehend it. So what if it's a saint artifact? Although my 5 elements sword is only a supreme grade spirit treasure, it is the combination of the 5 elements. Moreover, it is a natal magic treasure that has been cultivated step by step with my growth. Qin Hao's unexpected and obviously unwise behavior naturally had his reasons. But today I'll reenact the way I dealt with Yi Wen Dao in the past. Qin Hao made up his mind. Back then he had been nothing more than a newborn calf, not even in the Golden Core realm. Yi Wen Dao, a fellow disciple of the same sect, had not been very strong either. Compared to the current Qin Hao and Qin Lin, the difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. Qin Hao could kill him with a single breath. However, the foundation of the law of consummate arts would never change. The same move, when used by the current Qin Hao, was naturally much more powerful. Ding ding ding, boom boom boom. In an instant the two of them collided head-on. Crisp sounds of collision accompanied by raging sword chi suddenly exploded. It was extremely thrilling. However, Qin Hao frowned and the surrounding spectators were similarly puzzled because Qin Hao, who was in a dangerous close combat, had actually withdrawn his destruction sword insight, and the trajectory of his sword had undergone a shocking reversal. Every single swing of his sword seemed to be drawing a circle. Even more strange was that just by looking at Qin Lin's attacks, they were dazzling and too much for the eyes to take in, whereas just by looking at Qin Hao's attacks, they were gentle and slow like a willow in the wind, fluttering in a carefree manner. But the dense sounds of metal colliding told everyone that Qin Hao's speed of drawing his sword was absolutely not slow. This sort of visual difference was like the two of them were in 2 different heavens and earth, and they possessed different temporal laws. It was truly strange to the extreme. In fact, at this moment even Qin Hao himself had this strange feeling. Originally he had only intended to use the ultimate martial arts technique that he hadn't used for a long time, the Taiji Two Forms sword. But now, after he used it with his comprehension of the Heaven Dao law, state of mind, soul and true essence, he instantly entered into an empty world. All the sounds around him seemed to have disappeared, and everything seemed to have become extremely slow. This caused Qin Hao to be unable to determine whether it was his thinking and reaction that had instantly become extremely fast, or Qin Lin's attacks were really very slow. Qin Lin could be said to be ferocious, and every move of his was filled with murderous intent. His attacks were simply played in slow motion before his eyes, and it was completely effortless for him to capture all the trajectories of his attacks. Moreover, he had enough time to leisurely block, deflect, and attract with his sword. He didn't even need to use the Taiji fist that he had prepared to do two things at once. Just relying on the Taiji two-form sword, he easily dealt with Qinlin's attacks. At the same time, Qinlin's slaughter sword essence also filled his surroundings, and the changes of every strand of sword essence could be seen clearly. What's this? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Including Qin Shui and Long Ting, everyone stared blankly at the sky. Although they didn't know what was going on, they felt that it was powerful. They even suspected that they were seeing things and that they were hallucinating. Qinlin's eyes flashed with a trace of shock, and then he activated his power even more crazily and violently, striking out with his sword again and again. But what made him extremely terrified and frustrated was that every strike, no matter how tricky the angle of attack was, how powerful the power of the attack was, and how mysterious the ultimate martial arts were, they were all easily blocked by Qin Hao. Every time his sword clashed with Qin Hao's sword, he would activate the golden spear qi, wanting to break Qin Hao's sword. But every time, it was as if he had sunk into a very sticky quagmire. Not to mention breaking Qin Hao's sword, even performing the next move would be greatly affected. What made him even more shocked was that he felt that he had clearly captured the trajectory of Qin Hao's sword, and had even seen the trajectories clearly. But every time, Qin Hao clearly didn't change, and his sword seemed to automatically send itself to Qin Hao. The bystanders were utterly unable to imagine Qinlin's feelings at this moment. The more he fought, the more frustrated and shocked he felt. Qinlin knew that if this continued, not to mention killing Qin Hao, he probably wouldn't even be able to harm a single hair on Qin Hao's head. This ultimate martial art is truly strange. No, I can't fight him in close combat. Hiss. Qinlin didn't hesitate any longer. He slashed out with his sword, and then he suddenly retreated with the intention of resuming the long-range ultimate martial art battle. But his thoughts were beautiful, yet reality was cruel. Hiss. Qin Hao was like a strand of drifting breeze, light and gentle, yet he followed like a shadow, and he exerted the entanglement formula to the limit. Run. Dream on. I'm enjoying this state of unexpected events, so how could I not have an opponent? As a result, Qinlin and Qin Hao went back and forth in the sky. One retreated while the other advanced. One of them became crazier, scarier, and faster as the battle went on, while the other remained calm and collected. However, his momentum was unshakable like a mountain, and his movements were as calm as the ocean. No one knew that in Qin Hao's current state, no matter how ferocious Qinlin's attacks were, Qin Hao could no longer be described as being at ease under the premise that he didn't have an absolute advantage in terms of strength. To be exact, he had only split a portion of his attention to play with Qinlin, and most of his attention was focused on this wonderful state. Many Wuxia ultimate martial arts originated from Taoism, and many of them have the highest realm of twisting heaven and earth or even time and space. Could it be that, in this state, I've entered the independent law of time? Qin Hao pondered in his mind, especially when he thought of Tai Chi, the martial arts technique that was closest to Taoism. It made Qin Hao's imagination run wild. Phew. I didn't expect that I could enter such a mysterious state by using the Taiji Yin-Yang sword for fun. It seems that I have to practice it again in the future. Over the years, with the improvement of Qin Hao's cultivation, he had already integrated the combat skills of the martial arts world into his basic combat skills. It could be said that he had been using the martial arts world's unique combat skills all the time, but he had never used a single state of mind and all the moves seriously. But now he had unexpectedly used them and obtained such a miraculous effect. It was really unexpected. This also allowed Qin Hao to understand that as his comprehension of the laws of the heavenly Tao increased, his mental state and soul transformed, and he once again obtained a new interpretation and understanding of the ultimate techniques in the martial arts world. At the same time, it also made Qin Hao understand that on Earth, the ultimate techniques of the martial arts world, and the divine abilities of the Taoists were definitely much more powerful and unfathomable than he had imagined. In the blink of an eye, an hour had passed. After an hour of madness, the lively Qinlin had become a tiger that had lost its fangs. Although he still had the power of a tiger, he could no longer jump around. At this moment, Qinlin would rather Qin Hao severely injure him than continue fighting. But now, no matter what he did, he could not get rid of Qin Hao. What made him want to vomit blood was that every time he wanted to withdraw from the battle by inflicting serious injuries on himself, Qin Hao would kill him with a fatal move, forcing him to fight with all his strength. But now he was not injured. Even a fool could tell that Qin Hao was playing with him. But what could he do? Did he want to be lazy and admit defeat? Sorry, he would not give it to him. If he did not die, he would have to continue fighting. 2 hours later, Qin Lin had become an old tiger that was struggling at death's door. Whether it was the speed of his attack or his strength, they were both pitifully weak. But Qin Hao was still the same as before. Finally, after 3 hours, when Qin Lin no longer had the strength to attack, he saw that Qin Hao had once again killed him with a single blow and was about to force him to fight back. Even though he wanted to die, he was really unwilling to die just like that. However, he really didn't have any strength left to fight back. Thus, this brother's vision turned black in despair and he directly fell from the sky. Bang! Qin Lin fell dizzy, but he woke up. Like a dead dog that had lost all its strength, he widened his eyes in surprise, as if he could not believe that Qin Hao did not kill him. After all, he had refused to stop when it was time to fight. What made him even more confused and dumbfounded was that Qin Hao did not land with him this time. Instead, he was still in midair, leisurely dancing alone, dancing with his sword. Chapter 689. Is this his first time in this state? It must be so. After a brief shock, Qin Lin's face became extremely embarrassed, but at this moment he could no longer hesitate. Leaving while Qin Hao was unwilling to withdraw from this state was his best choice. After all, although he was a disciple of the Knights Templars and was one of the best among them, he had refused to stop at a certain point. At this time, even if Qin Hao killed him, he had asked for it. It did not violate the law of the vast universe galaxy. The most important thing was that he was too ashamed to continue to stay. Qin Lin took a deep breath and suddenly turned into a stream of light. He did not say a word, nor did he look at the present cultivators, and left dejectedly. Qin Hao saw this but did not stop him. It was enough to save the lives of the Pandong Current and Pandong Xing. He had no reason to clean up after them and cause endless trouble. As for the others, even if Qin Lin had just recovered his breath, his speed was not something that the Pandong Current and Pandong Xing could catch up with. Moreover, even if they could catch up, the Pandong Current would not dare to kill Qin Lin. What's more, if the Pandong Current and Pandong Xing killed Qin Lin, Qin Hao would be the culprit. It was enough that he had saved their lives. How could they let the Qin Lin family take revenge on them? Qin Shui and Long Ting would not chase after him. They felt that it was inappropriate to let Qin Hao come forward and end up in this life and death duel. When they saw that Qin Hao did not even hurt Qin Lin, they knew what Qin Hao was thinking. It was not easy to be a good person, especially in the cruel world of cultivation. At this moment, although the battle was over, no one left. They were still staring at Qin Hao, who was dancing alone in the void, trying to comprehend something from it. The Pandong Current and Pandong Xing held hands tightly. When they saw Qin Lin leave, they were relieved. After that, they looked at Qin Hao with gratitude. Even the Pandong Current did not know that she looked at Qin Hao with infatuation. Of course, the people who were also paying attention to Qin Hao did not notice it. After a full hour, Qin Hao's swordsmanship became faster and faster. What shocked everyone was that his swordsmanship, which looked light and graceful, suddenly sped up, causing the surrounding heaven and earth energy to revolve around him as he danced. In an instant, the heaven and earth energy around him condensed into rotating swordsmanship. His figure disappeared, turning into a huge ball of swordsmanship. Rumble. Chi. As the sphere's aura grew stronger and stronger, it became more and more terrifying. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion that resounded through the world. Immediately, countless rays of sword light shot into the endless void like locusts. Rumble. Rumble. Continuous explosions rang out, spanning thousands of miles and lasting for half a minute. At this moment, Long Ting and Qin Shui both opened their mouths wide in shock. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Such an attack were to hit them, it would definitely be an instant kill. Phew. Not bad at all. Good people are indeed rewarded. It was worth it to meddle in other people's business this time. Whoosh. Looking at his strongest attack, Qin Hao sighed with excitement in his heart. Immediately, his figure flashed and he came to Qin Shui and Long Ting's side. Isn't it powerful? Powerful, very powerful, The two women were still staring at the terrifying energy fluctuations in the distance, as if they had not recovered from their shock, and they murmured, "Brother! Brother Qinhao." At this moment Pan Dongxing and Pan Donglu came over hand in hand. They bowed deeply to Qinhao, and Pan Donglu said, "Qin, Brother Cold Blood, thank you for saving our lives." Pan Donglu had already called Qinhao brother, but when she wanted to thank him she changed it to Cold Blood. It was not that she wanted to do anything, but because she already thought that Qinhao helped them because of her friendship with Cold Blood. So, it seemed more intimate to say so. Qinhao frowned slightly and immediately said coldly, "If you want to thank someone, thank my two wives. I'm not in the mood to meddle in other people's business, no need to thank me. You'd better be careful that Qinlin will not give up." Long Ting glanced at the two and said, let's go in." Qin Shui looked at Pan Donglu with a strange look, and directly pulled Qinhao and said to Long Ting, "Ti, ti, ti, ti." The three punched at the same time, and the bright seven-colored light, which contained the mystery of the first barrier, suddenly broke the barrier. Immediately the three disappeared in front of Pan Donglu and Pan Dongxing. Pan Donglu was a little stunned, but Pan Dongxing still looked at the place where the three disappeared with gratitude. "Womanizer." As soon as they entered the barrier, Qin Shui said these 4 words. "What?" Qinhao asked frankly. "But she's a slut, that's more like it." Hearing Qin Shui's words, Qinhao smiled proudly. "What are you talking about?" Long Ting, who was a little careless, looked at the two puzzled and asked. She didn't notice the strangeness of Pan Donglu at all. But Qin Shui and Qinhao were both clever people, and they could feel the abnormality in a strange look. How could they not see the affection that Pan Donglu inadvertently revealed for Qinhao? Of course, this affection was actually nothing, and it was far less exaggerated than Qin Shui's slut. It was just clear that Pan Donglu had a relationship with Qinlin, and then the current childhood sweetheart Pan Dongxing. At least it showed that Pan Donglu was indeed not the kind of woman who could be dead set on a man. Even if she could do it, she probably had other thoughts in her mind. In fact, there were many such people in the cultivation world. Men were basically this kind of birds, and a man like Pan Dongxing was definitely 1 in 100 million. Women like Pan Donglu, especially before losing their primordial yin, basically accounted for more than half of them. It was undeniable that Qinhao's attraction to women was too strong. If it was someone else, it would not necessarily be so. "Nothing," Qinhao and Qin Shui said at the same time. "Start comprehending." Long Ting frowned and glared. She didn't ask any more questions and said directly, "Brother, how does Pan Donglu know that you are cold-blooded?" "I'm also curious," Qin Shui asked. Just now Pan Donglu called Qinhao cold-blooded brother, and Qin Shui guessed that it might be a fake identity that Qinhao used in the second world. Now Long Ting asked this, so it was naturally true. What's there to be curious about? When I was in the arena of Donglu City in the second world, she fought with me once. He probably recognized my aura. No way. Although I was fully armed in the second world, my charm was really strong, like a firefly in the night. Let's not talk about this. Hurry up and comprehend. I'll comprehend it first. This harvest is good. The state you entered just now? Yes. When this sect ruin is settled, I'll teach you some real unique skills. Okay, let's get started. I really can't write it, so I'll just write it like this for the time being. Chapter 690. Gasp. Qinlin, who was running away while swallowing spiritual elixirs to recover quickly, had a distorted expression on his handsome face. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Qinlin was defeated by a cultivator at the peak of the initial stage of the Earth celestial stage. Otherwise, how can I keep my face? He should have entered a wonderful state by accident. Otherwise, when I was exhausted, he had no reason to stop. I can't let that bastard couple go. But, thinking of Qinhao's abnormal strength, Qinlin's eyes flickered. Finally, he endured it. Now he couldn't do anything to his opponent. At least if he went back in the short term, he would be humiliating himself. He had to admit that this time he had suffered a complete setback. He had thought that he could reap a great harvest after encountering the powerful treasure land of the sect's relics. He didn't expect to encounter the meat in his mouth and fall into the mouth of another person. If he had taken back the Fan Donglu and killed Fan Dongxing, it would have been fine. But he didn't expect that Qinhao would interfere and refuse the conditions. He wanted to have a life-and-death duel with Qinhao, but he lost completely. I'd better go deeper first. The law of time here is very long. I'm afraid I'll have to stay here for at least hundreds of years, which is enough for me to reach the heaven celestial stage. At that time I'd like to see how he can stop me. Humph. Qin Lin took a deep breath and made a decision. Moling Taxia had contacted him about Qin Hao before he set off. At that time he intuitively thought that it was because of Long Ting. So Moling Taxia had specially asked him to take care of Qin Hao. Therefore as they went deeper the chances of meeting each other became higher and higher. It was naturally better to borrow the power of Moling Taxia. But Qin Lin didn't think about this at all. He had been defeated by Qin Hao and lost face. He had to defeat Qin Hao with his strength in order to wash away his shame and save his face. Half a month later. In Qin Hao's sect ruin, cultivators continued to arrive one after another. There were already several thousand people, all of them cultivators that had set out from East Flow City. Throughout the entire sect ruin, besides the core palace that was protected by layers upon layers of barriers, everything else had already been turned upside down. Finally, everyone sat around the barriers and began to comprehend the powerful lost arts contained within. As for whether or not they could obtain the inheritance left behind by the sect within the barriers, the vast majority of people knew that there wasn't much hope. Even so, this was an excellent place to cultivate, much less the lost arts contained within the barriers. Naturally, no one wanted to leave. Hiss. An invisible streamer hidden in the void appeared in the space millions of miles away from the sect ruins at an astonishing speed and was still moving forward quickly. It was Qin Hao's miniature aircraft, Wuxia No. 1. DDD, Master's lock onto Master's life aura. Simulate the scene. Not long after, Small Wisdom One's voice sounded in the aircraft. Hiss. Immediately the scene of the sect ruins appeared in the aircraft. The ruins of an ancient sect? Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei looked at the simulated scene in front of them and suddenly revealed a trace of surprise. Master's life aura is in the core of the sect ruins and is protected by layers upon layers of magical law barriers. This little wisdom is temporarily unable to contact Master. Master, should we land? Small Wisdom One asked in an emotionless mechanical voice. It was the product of the combination of Earth's science and magical law. It was Qin Hao's spiritual artifact spirit and also the brain of Wuxia No. 1. At this moment, it could only sense Qin Hao's life aura by means of scientific detection, but it couldn't sense its master, Qin Hao, as an artifact spirit. Clearly, the barrier had sealed the connection between it and the law of divine ability within the barrier. Han Mei, shall we go in and take a look? Hearing Small Wisdom One's words, Venerable Yun Wei looked at Venerable Han Mei and said, Look, there are thousands of cultivators cultivating in the core. There must be great benefits. Yes, they are all cultivators of the human race, so there shouldn't be any problem. Let's go down and take a look. Hiss. Hearing their words, Small Wisdom One directly opened the cabin door of the aircraft and said, Masters, if there is any trouble, you just need to fly into the air quickly. Small Wisdom will come to your rescue. Hiss. Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei immediately transformed into two gusts of wind and blended into the heaven and earth. Both of them had also mastered the carving technique that Qin Hai had left for Wuji Immortal Palace. However, due to the restriction of their innate talent, they couldn't conceal themselves to the same level as Qin Hao and Qin Shui. Especially in this space filled with origin energy, they could only conceal themselves from ordinary cultivators when the other party wasn't paying attention. However, they didn't expect to hide anything with this technique. They just wanted to prevent the people around them from sensing their sudden appearance. Let's go. In more than 10 years, the strength of these two who were at the peak of the late stage of the Earth celestial stage had greatly improved. However, they still couldn't touch the barrier. This situation was no different from other cultivators. When they arrived near the sect ruins, they had already released their auras. Their minds were filled with surprise and excitement as they sensed the extremely powerful origin energy and the law of heaven in the sect ruins. They had never thought that they would be able to enter such a powerful place to cultivate. They knew very well that among all the cultivators who had entered the primitive secret land, they were basically at the bottom since they were from a small planet. Not to mention the cultivators in the vast universe galaxy, even the cultivators from other vital planets in the Yang star were stronger than them. Therefore, when they got this opportunity, their only plan was to find a remote place to cultivate until the end of the primitive secret land. They didn't want to be killed. This allowed little wisdom number 1, which was the first to set off, to find the two of them without much effort. When they saw small wisdom 1, their surprise was indescribable. However, they were afraid of being a burden to Qinhao. At first they refused to look for Qinhao. It wasn't until small wisdom 1 told them about the law of time and Qinhao's plan that they agreed. Now, looking at the valiant sect ruins, the two of them were naturally excited. After observing the other cultivators for a while, they understood what was going on and began to comprehend the barrier loss technique. However, "Hey old beauty, which army are you from? It's not in your army's territory. Why are you here? You're so weak and yet you're running around. Move aside. I'll take this place." In less than half a day, a middle-aged cultivator whose aura was extremely powerful to Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei appeared in front of them and said domineeringly. Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei frowned slightly when they heard what the other party said. However, they could only get up and give up the good spot. The situation forced them to give up. Otherwise, if they fought over it, it would be within the rules even if they were killed. They couldn't blame anyone else. Seeing the two obediently give up, the cultivator smiled and thought to himself, "Her aura is so weak but she's so beautiful. She must be a cultivator from a small planet under the jurisdiction of the 36 main planets. Otherwise she wouldn't be so weak. If I can get her, she'll be a good slave." Hey? Two old beauties, there are more and more cultivators in this sect ruins. With your cultivation you won't be able to stay around the core barrier. I don't mind letting you stay together as long as you agree to be my servants. How about it? Looking at your appearances, you should be from a small planet. I'm a disciple of a powerful sect in East Flow City. Following me will be much better than staying on your small planet. Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei's expressions flashed with a trace of anger. Their bodies paused for a moment before they quickly left. "You don't know what's good for you." The cultivator scolded and punched the barrier. In this situation, especially with the token transmitting information, even if he was strong, he wouldn't dare to violate the rules and force them to stay. After all, the other party had already given up the spot. "Han Mei, it seems that we won't be able to find the place." The two circled around the barrier, but more and more cultivators divided their own areas and didn't let anyone get close. Occasionally they would see a gap, but the two didn't stop for long before new cultivators came in and seized it with their strength. "Forget it, we'll just cultivate in the periphery. The barrier's lost art is extremely profound. It won't be easy for us to comprehend it. Let's not join in the fun," Venerable Han Mei said. Although she said so, the expression on her face was obviously unwilling. Anyone who had the opportunity to comprehend a powerful lost art but couldn't get close to it would feel unwilling. But what could they do? Brother Dongxing, Pan Donglu and Pan Dongxing, who had already broken through the first barrier, were comprehending between the first and second barrier. But at this moment Pan Donglu, who had just comprehended a sentence of the incantation, suddenly saw two figures when he was looking at the increasing number of cultivators outside. His eyes locked on one of them and he shouted to Pan Dongxing. What's wrong, Pan Donglu? Look at that woman." Pan Donglu pointed at a figure outside and said, "What's wrong?" Pan Dongxing looked in the direction pointed by Pan Donglu and saw two women with weak auras who were obviously very old. Although they were middle-aged women who still had a charming appearance, there was nothing else about them that was eye-catching. "Don't you think they look exactly the same as Qin Xiaobai? They really look alike." Pan Dongxing looked carefully and said after hearing Pan Donglu's words. Qin Xiaobai had changed his aura and appearance, but his changed appearance was indeed 80 to 90% similar to the middle-aged woman he saw. Furthermore, it was certain that after Qin Xiaobai changed his appearance, he would most likely look exactly the same as the middle-aged woman he saw. "Carefully sense her blood qi," Pan Donglu said again. "Donglu, I haven't paid much attention to Qin Xiaobai, and I'm far inferior to you in this aspect. What did you find?" Pan Dongxing said. Chapter 691. Pan Donglu was very sensitive to aura, which was also a kind of talent. Although it was not a supernatural ability, it was very useful for recognizing people. This was also one of the reasons why Pan Donglu could conclude that Qinhao was cold-blooded just by fighting with Qinhao in the second world. Their blood qi seems to be a bit similar. "Dongxing, let's go and have a look. They seem to be bullied. I think they should be related to Qin Xiaobai." Otherwise, Qin Xiaobai's appearance would not be so coincidental. Their blood qi is also a bit similar. Qin Xiaobai is Brother Cold-Blooded's Taoist companion and has helped us. If they are really related, we should help them to repay their kindness. Okay. Pan Dongxing said without any hesitation. What Pan Donglu and Pan Dongxing saw was when Han Mei Immortal Venerable and Yun Wei Immortal Venerable had their spots snatched away again. It was also when they decided to give up the barrier lost art and cultivate on the side. At this moment, if Qin Hao, Qin Shui and Long Ting were still in between the first and second layer of the barrier, they would have sensed the arrival of Immortal Venerable Han Mei and Immortal Venerable Yun Wei. Unfortunately, the three of them were too abnormal for the other cultivators. They had already broken through the fourth layer of the barrier and were far ahead of the other cultivators. In this interlayer space, they could only sense the interlayer of the upper barrier. In other words, they could only sense the interlayer of the third and fourth barrier. Up until now, no cultivator had entered. You too. Just as Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei soared into the sky and wanted to leave the barrier for a distance to cultivate, two extremely powerful auras suddenly chased after them. Two young people, a man and a woman, were only at the peak of the early stage of the human immortal realm, but they brought great pressure to Han Mei and Yun Wei. In an instant, Han Mei and Yun Wei knew that these two people were definitely the top geniuses of the vast universe galaxy. Why were they chasing after them? Don't panic, we mean no harm. Pan Donglu saw their expressions and said with a smile, "Excuse me, do you know Qin Xiaobai?" Qin Xiaobai? Han Mei and Yun Wei both frowned but did not say anything. Due to their lowly status and low cultivation, they had to maintain sufficient vigilance and did not dare to speak rashly when meeting anyone. They naturally knew who Qin Xiaobai was. When Little Wisdom Number 1 persuaded them to come over, it had already told them about the situation of the girls, including the fact that the girls were disciples of the temple, and that it was a fake identity. We are Qin Hao, Qin Xiaobai and Long Ting's friends. Brother Qin Hao and the other two have entered the depths of the barrier. I see that you look very similar to Qin Xiaobai, so, Pan Donglu said. Han Mei and Yun Wei looked at each other and Han Mei said, Qin Xiaobai is my daughter. May I know who the two of you are? Judging from the other party's attitude, there was no reason for them to lie to them. Therefore, when they met with Qin Hao, their identities would naturally be exposed. It was not a big deal to say it now. Hearing Venerable Han Mei's words, Flowing East Flow was slightly surprised. Although she had speculated that Venerable Han Mei was related to Qin Xiaobai, and that they might be related by blood, she did not expect that she was Qin Xiaobai's mother. After all, Qin Xiaobai was a disciple of the temple. She knew how strong his talent was. I was rude just now. This junior is Pan Donglu. This is junior's Dao companion Pan Dongxing. Brother Qin Hao and the others saved our lives. Auntie, if you don't mind, can we take you with us? And this senior is? Pan Donglu's expression suddenly became respectful and said. At the same time she looked at Yun Wei and asked. We are Qin Hao's master when he was young? Venerable Han Mei transmitted. She originally wanted to say master, but when she thought of Qin Hao's current strength, she added the word young instead. Then thank you. Masters, you're welcome. It is our honor to be able to help you. Pan Donglu did not call them auntie but master. It was obvious that she was standing on Qin Hao's side. When the cultivator who had just seized the positions of Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yun Wei saw Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yun Wei come back respectfully, his face suddenly changed. Without thinking, he hurriedly bowed to the four people of Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yun Wei. Then with a chi sound he flew away. Although he would not be killed at this time after leaving the primitive mystic realm, it would be easy for Miss Pan Donglu, the number 1 genius girl of East Flow City, to kill him. How could he not be afraid? Fortunately, he was only trying to snatch a spot and did not do anything too extreme. Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei were shocked when they saw this scene. They were shocked by the power of Pan Donglu and Pan Dongxing, and even more shocked by the status and identity of the geniuses of vast universe galaxy. Just because of Qin Hao, they were so polite and respectful to them. How strong was their disciple now? They could not imagine. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. When they were still tens of thousands of miles away from the sect ruins where Qin Hao was, a crisp voice suddenly sounded from an aircraft. Mistress Huan Huan Lele, We have received a message from leader Xiaoji. Master is in the sect ruins tens of thousands of miles away from here. Master's 2 masters have arrived. There are many cultivators in the sect ruins and the competition is fierce. They are all cultivators from East Flow City. Really? Leng Ninghuan's face showed extreme surprise and asked. According to the original estimate, it would take a few months to find Qin Hao. Unexpectedly, there was news at this time. Great. Floey, let's go faster. Leng Ningle stood up and said with surprise and excitement. Mistress, Chief Xiaoji ordered you to enter the sect ruins by yourselves. Floey needs to cooperate with Chief Xiaoji to welcome Little Lotus, Nether and Little Dance. Is that so? Then we will go by ourselves. Thousands of miles will only take a few minutes. Leng Ningle said. Masters, according to Chief Xiaoji's message, after you enter the sect ruins, you will not be able to meet up with Master for the time being. At this moment, there are layers of barriers at the core of the sect ruins. All the cultivators are comprehending. After entering the barrier, Chief Xiaoji will only be able to sense the aura of life. Master Qin Shui and Long Ting have already entered the depths of the barrier. The 2 masters have also entered the barrier with the help of 2 genius disciples from East Flow City. Oh, I understand. Floey was the artificial intelligence of Floey. It was also the aircraft that Qin Hao specially refined for the Leng sisters. Chi. Leng Ningle and Leng Ninghuan turned into 2 streams of light and rushed towards the sect ruins with excitement. However, the 2 of them were the same as Qin Shui. They also concealed their true bodies. They were different from Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei. Their identities as disciples of the sanctum could help them avoid a lot of trouble. Moreover, the 2 of them were the same as Qin Shui. In just a few years their strength had increased tremendously. The sisters' telepathy had already evolved to the point where their minds were connected. When the 2 of them joined forces, not to mention the cultivators of East Flow City, even ordinary disciples of the sanctum were no match for them. At this moment, there were already over 30,000 people in the sect ruins. Moreover, there were quite a few of East Flow City's senior captains and above. The proportion of temple disciples that were at the level of senior captains was even higher. This was also the reason why Qin Shui, Long Ting, and the others were riding a senior captain-level flying vehicle that was relatively close to them. In fact, those who came here were basically cultivators from the 30 to 40 aircraft nearby. Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei had arrived earlier. Moreover, their auras were very weak, so not many cultivators paid attention to them. In fact, it was only the cultivators who had snatched their territory that paid attention to them. Therefore, when the cultivators present suddenly sensed the arrival of 2 powerful auras, they all looked towards the void. When they saw the 2 female disciples of the sanctum who were only at the peak of the earthly immortal stage, they were all surprised and puzzled. These cultivators had basically seen the images of the sanctum disciples sent by the East Flow teacher this time. Among them, the captain-level cultivators had even seen the true bodies of all the sanctum disciples. However, Leng Ninghuan and Leng Ninglu were obviously not from the East Flow teacher. Why would they come so far and come here? However, although they were puzzled, no one dared to provoke them. Any sanctum disciple who came here would be able to break through the first barrier in a few days. Their powerful perception and talent were not something that ordinary people could compare to. Although they had hidden their true bodies, the sisters' appearances were still exactly the same. After landing, there was no need for them to observe at all. There were enthusiastic cultivators who took the initiative to approach them and tell them how to break through the first barrier. They even took the initiative to impart some of their comprehensions to them. However, Leng Ninghuan and Leng Ninglu decisively refused. When one reached a certain status, the things one had to pay attention to were naturally different from ordinary people. If one didn't put on any airs, it would be nice to say that one wanted to form a good relationship with others. To put it bluntly, there were many people who wanted to curry favor with them. After understanding the key point, the 2 began to comprehend. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. Between the 8th and 9th barrier, Qin Hao comprehended another spell. He slowly opened his eyes and said, Xiao Shui, Sister Ting, you 2 comprehend first. I have to go out and take a look. Some of them should be arriving soon, Qi. Just as Qin Hao finished speaking, Long Ting, who was immersed in her comprehension, suddenly shone with a resplendent rainbow light. She opened her eyes proudly and said, Brother Hao, Xiao Shui, I've comprehended everything. Oh, Not bad. Out of the 9 barriers, 3 of them are suitable for you. Alright, you pass it to Xiao Shui first. I'll go out and take a look. Chen Hao said. Come back quickly. This might be the last barrier. Long Ting said. Hiss. Chen Hao disappeared on the spot. Chapter 692. Chen Hao did not investigate in the interlayer of the barrier. He directly rushed out of the barrier and entered the sect ruins. Sure enough, as soon as he stepped out of the barrier, Chen Hao sensed the existence of Xiaoji through the magical law of the aircraft. Master. As Chen Hao's magic weapon Xiaoji One, who had a trace of intelligence, suddenly said excitedly in Chen Hao's mind. When did they arrive? Did the 2 masters receive them? Chen Hao asked. Yes. Master, the 2 masters were brought into the barrier by 2 genius disciples of East Flow City. One of them is called Pandong Flow, and he said that he is a friend of Master and Matriarch Chen Shui. Oh. Chen Hao was slightly puzzled. How did Pandong Flow and Pandong Xing know that Han Mei and Yun Wei are related to us? According to the information I monitored, it was because of Han Mei's aura and appearance that the Pandong Flow judged that she is related to Matriarch Chen Shui. When she first contacted the 2 masters, she asked Chen Xiaobai. At that time, the 2 masters were occupied by other cultivators, so she was helping the 2 masters. Chen Hao frowned slightly and immediately glanced at the dense cultivators around the barrier and the cultivators who could not get close. He immediately understood what was going on and secretly said, "This Pandong Flow's ability to recognize people is really amazing. Master Huan Huan and Lele have also arrived. They just entered the barrier not long ago. Huanle was ordered by me to pick up the other matriarchs." Xiaoji One continued. Good. In this way we will not leave the sect ruins in a short time. You also go to pick them up lest they waste time looking for them. Yes, master. Boom. Immediately, Chen Hao punched the barrier and broke through the first layer of the barrier. His powerful perception spread out. Chen Hao found that there were more than 10,000 cultivators who broke through the first layer. However, Chen Hao easily locked onto 2 familiar auras. They hadn't seen each other for so many years. Even though he had Chen Shui first, Chen Hao was still a little excited. This was definitely the first person he would be able to enjoy the happiness of having 2 wives, so how could he not be excited? After all, no matter what the beautiful sisters did, they were always together. When the time was ripe, Chen Hao would be able to enjoy the blessings of having 2 wives. Of course, this thought only flashed through his mind. This was not the time to think about Ruo Feifei. The biggest reason why he was a little excited was naturally not because of that. Chen Hao directly blended into the world, completely concealing his aura. A moment later, 2 figures who had concealed their true appearances and were sitting cross-legged with their backs facing each other appeared before Chen Hao's eyes. Hee hee, Chen Hao laughed mischievously in his heart. Then, Leng Ninghuan, who was immersed in comprehending the second barrier, clearly felt a breeze blowing on her face. Although she was a little surprised, she didn't care, but this breeze was getting stronger and stronger. Just when she realized that it was man-made, she suddenly opened her eyes. Sister, what's wrong? Leng Ninglu, who was connected to Leng Ninghuan's mind, sensed Leng Ninghuan's surprise and asked in her mind. No, nothing. Leng Ninghuan looked at Chen Hao's face that was inches away from her. Her face turned red as she replied to her sister in her mind. Sister, you're about to see him. Why are you so excited at this time? You should quickly comprehend it. Leng Ninglu said after hearing Leng Ninghuan's reply. Leng Ninghuan, who was sitting cross-legged with her back facing Leng Ninghuan, naturally couldn't see Chen Hao. Similarly, Chen Hao, who had also concealed his aura, couldn't be sensed by her. However, she could easily sense Leng Ninghuan's mood. This was clearly a phenomenon that would only occur when thinking about Chen Hao. Sister, why is your self-control so weak? So embarrassing. While the 2 were conversing, Chen Hao had already kissed Leng Ninghuan's tender lips. Leng Ninghuan closed her eyes shyly and clumsily replied to Chen Hao. She had lost all thoughts in her mind, only Chen Hao. It was also at this time that Leng Ninglu said the words, so embarrassing, because she felt the same way. But she thought it was just her sister's imagination. But just as she said those words, 2 large hands suddenly cupped her face from behind, causing her to scream in shock. Leng Ninghuan instantly woke up from her stupor and hurriedly pushed Chen Hao away. This fellow laughed out loud and pulled the 2 girls into his embrace. Brother Hao, Ling Ninglu looked at Qin Hao in surprise. Ling Ning Huan, on the other hand, allowed Qin Hao to hug her without making a sound because she was kissed. Qin Hao smiled and gently kissed Ling Ning Li's lips, saying, "The two masters arrived earlier than you. I will first teach you the secret technique of the layers of barriers, then teach them Qi. Rumble. Rumble, ah." Long Ting suddenly cried out when she broke the 9th layer of barrier with a punch. "What's going on?" Qin Shui also looked around in surprise. Qin Hao, who took less than half an hour to return, was also very surprised. Could it be that this barrier will be completely destroyed if one person fully comprehends it? He taught the secret technique to the sisters Han Mei and Yun Wei because Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Xing helped the two masters. Qin Hao didn't want to drag them down, so he taught the secret technique to the Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Xing. However, they were separated by several layers of barriers. Even if he taught them, they would need some time to learn and comprehend it. Therefore, Qin Hao didn't wait for them. But at this time, after Long Ting taught him and Qin Shui the secret technique of the 9th layer of barrier, they were about to break the barrier first. However, an unexpected scene occurred. All the barriers suddenly exploded violently with a punch from Long Ting, and all of them collapsed. Countless exclamations broke out. Whether it was the cultivators who were immersed in comprehending the secret technique or the cultivators who hadn't comprehended the first layer of barrier, they were all shocked by the aura of the collapse of the barrier. Their eyes were filled with horror as they looked at the core of the ruins. An endless pressure erupted from the core. Countless 7-colored rays of light, like fireworks exploding in the sky, poured down from the 9 heavens. What is this? What a terrifying pressure! The gate of time and space. This is the gate of time and space. A disciple of the divine palace suddenly exclaimed. When the overwhelming pressure slowly descended from the void, countless people felt as if their souls were being pressed down. Even Qin Hao was extremely shocked. A disordered feeling that went straight to the depths of their souls emerged in everyone's hearts. "Master, hurry, come with mistress and your master. This is the gate of time and space. It will teleport you to the secret realm." At this time, Old God's voice sounded in Qin Hao's mind. Gate of time and space? Hearing Old God's confirmation, Qin Hao suddenly pulled Long Ting and Qin Shui. With a cheek sound, he turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the sisters at lightning speed. Soon after, he arrived beside Senior Immortal Han Mei and Senior Immortal Yun Wei. Everyone hold each other's hands. Hug each other. At this moment, Qin Hao sensed the increasingly majestic and terrifying pressure, as well as the chaotic feeling. He was slightly excited. Even he did not expect that this sex relic would not contain an absolute art inheritance, but a space-time gate. The so-called Gate of Time and Space was mentioned in the information of the primitive secret realm. Whenever the Gate of Time and Space appeared, all the cultivators present would be teleported to the sacred training grounds left behind from ancient times in the primitive secret realm. The reason why Qin Hao was excited, other than the sacred training grounds, was that the Gate of Time and Space wasn't a single one. It ran through the entire universe of the primitive secret realm. In other words, the cultivators who could enter the sacred training grounds definitely weren't cultivators from the sect ruins. Cultivators from other races could also encounter the Gate of Time and Space that would teleport them to the same sacred training grounds. Qin Hao knew that in a short while, everyone present would be teleported to an unknown secret realm. Qin Hao pulled Long Ting and Qin Shui, Long Ting pulled the sisters, and Qin Shui pulled Han Mei and Yun Wei. Brother Qin Hao. Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Xing both looked at Qin Hao. Han Mei Immortal Venerable and Yun Wei Immortal Venerable had a good impression of Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dong Xing, who had helped them. Seeing their expressions, they naturally knew that they wanted to go with them. Therefore both of them looked at Qin Hao inquisitively. Qin Hao didn't hesitate and nodded. Since he had just taught them the unique skill contained in the layers of barriers, there was no need to abandon them now. Seeing Qin Hao nod, Apotheon Yun Wei directly grabbed Pan Dong Lu's hand. Gate of Time and Space. I didn't expect to encounter a Gate of Time and Space so soon. Great. The first disciple of the Divine Palace who called out the Gate of Time and Space said excitedly, "The third group of East Flow City, gather here. Once you enter, there is a high chance that you will encounter cultivators from other races. Now it's time for us to unite. The fourth group, come to me, be quick. It's too late. If you are not from the third group, you are also welcome to join." I am the leader of the first group. No matter who you are welcome to join. I am the leader of the 8th group. I guarantee a fair distribution. Who wants to join? When the temple's disciples, captains and vice-captains began to recruit, Qinhao directly released a pitch-black energy to envelop them, clearly telling the surrounding cultivators that they were going to act alone. Many disciples of the Divine Palace who were at the level of a leader came, but the cultivators who came here were basically from the 3rd and 4th groups, which were the 2 groups that were closest to this place when they entered the primitive secret realm. Qin Shui, Long Ting and Qinhao were in a group, but the cultivators in their group basically didn't come. Otherwise, Qinhao's actions wouldn't be justified. The sisters didn't need to perform their duties, and the group didn't belong to the East Flow division. Chapter 693. What does the space-time door mean? I believe everyone has read about it in the primitive mystic realm. Once you enter, you'll definitely encounter cultivators from other races. There's a limit to one person's power. If you don't want to die, hurry up and join us. There's not much time left. Hiss hiss hiss. Above their heads the heaven and earth spirit chi gathered. The 7-colored light became brighter and brighter, and the ancient aura became more intense. In the depths of every cultivator's soul, the space-time disorder became more and more obvious. The primitive mystic realm that the space-time door leads to is the original universe's top geniuses' training ground. It runs through the galaxy and traverses the universe. If it wasn't for the collapse of the universe, we'll definitely die if we enter. That's right. The space-time law in the primitive mystic realm is so powerful. How powerful is the original universe? The universe's top geniuses' training ground isn't something we can withstand. However, after the collapse of the universe, although the training ground remains, the ferocious beasts are definitely extinct. Even so, the mechanisms and restrictions are probably not something ordinary people can withstand. Forget it, for safety's sake, I'll withdraw. I'll withdraw too. It's not necessarily safe to join a team. As the space-time door gradually formed, many cultivators joined the team formed by a few experts. However, there were also cultivators with weaker abilities who chose to leave before the space-time door formed. However, this was only a small number of cultivators who were self-aware and had a good mentality. Most cultivators, even if they were not strong enough, could not withstand the temptation of the training ground. Let's forget it. It's not bad for us to cultivate in the sect ruins. Seeing this, Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yun Wei looked at each other and said to Qinhao, "Don't worry, we're here. Nothing will happen, the 2 of us are too weak. I'm afraid we won't be able to withstand the restrictions of the training ground. By then we'll be a burden to you. However, we don't ask for much. Even if we cultivate outside, it'll be enough for us to break through to the heaven immortal stage when we step out of the primitive mystic realm. That's enough." "Master, do you have to be so courteous with your disciples? Don't worry, you won't be a burden to us." "Yes, Mother." Master Yunwei, don't think so much. The space-time law here is extremely powerful. We can go in and cultivate together. Who knows, the training ground space might be huge. Qin Shui said. Buzz. Buzz. At this moment, a violent buzzing sound suddenly came from the heaven and earth. The rainbow-colored light that poured down finally completely condensed into a potlid-shaped light curtain, enveloping everyone. At the same time, an ancient door that was blooming with bright golden light like a mirage appeared above the 9th heaven. Huff, huff, inside the golden ancient gate dark clouds were rolling. Thick ancient aura and origin energy from the desolation era gushed out from the ancient gate like a pitch-black waterfall pouring down. Wormhole. It's actually a space-time gate formed by a spatial wormhole. At this moment, a knowledgeable disciple suddenly exclaimed, "This must be the best training ground in the primal universe. How extravagant!" Hiss hiss hiss. It was also at this moment that an endless profound aura emerged from the pitch-black black hole of ancient energy. At this moment, everyone's souls began to tremble. The feeling of space and time being in disarray caused countless cultivators with weak wills to feel like they were seeing the flow of time or the future. All sorts of strange illusions filled their minds. Even Venerable Immortal Han Mei and Venerable Immortal Yun Wei were no exception. Their eyes instantly became dull. On the other hand, Qin Hao and the other cultivators with formidable soul force and formidable strength were able to faintly see an ancient shrine flickering with 7-colored radiance within the surging dark clouds that were like a black hole. The entire shrine was refined from 7-colored jade crystals, and it was sparkling and translucent. Brilliant light flowed within it, and numerous profound and complicated ancient talisman markings seemed to be alive as they flowed within it, emitting a majestic aura that terrified the soul. A palace-type training ground. This is a palace-type training ground. It must be a training ground condensed by the top experts of the primal universe. What do you mean? Hearing that it was the cultivator who was the first to exclaim in shock, countless cultivators present looked over. There were even disciples of the sacred hall who voiced their doubts. They only felt that the palace that appeared was extremely powerful. Even the sacred palace of the human race might not be comparable to it. How powerful was the sacred palace of the human race? Before entering the primal secret region, they had cultivated in the sacred palace for more than half a year. They deeply understood this point. This is equivalent to the existence of the sacred palace of the human race. And it's definitely stronger than the sacred palace. The space-time door is about to be condensed. This time we will all reap great rewards. Master, this is probably stronger than the sacred palace of the human race. Before the universe collapsed, it should be a top sacred palace of a powerful galaxy in this universe. It has the same status as the sacred palace. When it collapsed, the Almighty of the universe worked together to connect the starry sky and set up this training ground. If I'm not wrong, after all of you enter, countless people will be able to obtain the inheritance within. Of course, the space wormhole, which is the starry sky tunnel, is enough to show that many cultivators will be able to enter. It's actually that powerful. Hearing old god's words, Qin Hao was shocked. Chi. At this moment, the palace that resembled a sacred palace suddenly shot out rays of mysterious rainbow light that penetrated the wormhole. It was as if a bridge had been set up in the wormhole that led to the other side of the starry sky, and it poured onto every cultivator. Whoosh. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Almost at the same time, all the cultivators present turned into streams of light that merged into the wormhole and the space-time door. They disappeared in the direction of the sacred palace like shooting stars. Oh no. It was also at this moment that Qin Hao exclaimed in his heart. This was because an irresistible space-time energy caused Qin Shuai and Long Ting, who were holding hands with him, to suddenly disappear. Qin Hao was extremely shocked. It felt like an instant, but the scene in front of him had completely changed and he had entered a brand new space. There were barren mountains and at a glance not a single blade of grass grew. It was a stretch of barren land, and besides the ancient aura, even the spiritual energy of heaven and earth seemed to be extremely scarce. It was just like the barren mountains in front of him, barren and desolate. How could this be? Qin Hao was in disbelief. Just a moment ago he had been excited about entering the powerful training ground left behind by the primitive mystic realm, but now, Qin Hao felt as if he had returned to the secular world. No, to be precise, it was a place that was even worse than the secular world. No, could it be an illusion? In just an instant Qin Hao was shocked to discover that his perception was only a pitiful 100 meters. What did 100 meters mean? What surprised him even more was that his Dantian sea of energy had actually become a dry and desolate ocean. There was not even a trace of vital essence left, and his mind power seemed to have been sucked dry and he could not use it at all. What was even more shocking was that Qin Hao's connection with his mind seemed to have been completely cut off. Even Qin Hao felt a fear of the unknown at this moment. He tried to summon old god, but there was no response. To be precise, it was not that there was no response, but that Qin Hao felt as if he had turned into a mortal, the most ordinary person, a person without any magical powers. What's going on? Also, why didn't they teleport together with me? Such a sudden change was completely unexpected. He slowly closed his eyes and carefully sensed his surroundings, wanting to find the reason. However, after standing there for half an hour, Qin Hao reluctantly gave up. All of this was real. He had entered a barren space and had become an ordinary young man, a young man without the slightest bit of cultivation. This kind of feeling was like a huge mountain pressing down on his heart. Everything was sealed by an invisible force that could not be touched or seen. Moreover, it was so real that Qin Hao himself could not feel the feeling of being sealed. Only his clear mind told him that he was being sealed. Since this is a sacred ground for training, it must be a kind of training ground for cultivators. Could it be that the space I entered is a transcendent mortal? Qin Hao gazed at the barren mountain in the distance. Even his innate eyesight had become mediocre. Other than the legendary transcendent mortal, what else could it be? At this moment he was no different from an ordinary person. In terms of physical strength, Qin Hao didn't even need to test it out to know that he was powerless. He couldn't even compare to his younger self. Gulu gulu, a sound that he hadn't heard for many years came from his stomach, and it made Qin Hao smile helplessly. Hunger. He was an earth celestial expert, but he actually felt hungry. How could this be? Qin Shui looked at the surrounding space in shock as she sensed her own condition. The same shock appeared on Long Ting, the Leng sisters, Venerable Han Mei, and all the other cultivators who were in the same space. The old god said that when the universe collapsed, it would destroy the independent space laws and all life. Even if the area we were teleported to is a sacred ground for training, it definitely wouldn't contain independent space laws. In other words, this place can't be that big. Qin Hao shook his head. Even if his guess was correct when he thought about the size of the primitive secret realm in the universe before it collapsed. Even if the sacred ground for training wasn't big, it should be comparable to a small planet, right? Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be a problem. But now he was no different from an ordinary person. At this moment, even Qin Hao didn't know where to go or what to do. Could it be that he had to cultivate from the beginning? Rumble. At this moment, a loud sound suddenly came from the distant sky. Chapter 694. Crack. Dark clouds rolled, thunder and lightning filled the sky, and a fierce wind swept across the whole world. Walala, are you kidding me? I'm going to... A master at the Earth's celestial stage had never thought that he would be knocked over by a fierce wind and drenched by a torrential rain. It would be a joke in the cultivation world of the vast universe galaxy. But now, it was happening to Qin Hao. Bang! Qin Hao saw stars and his body felt like it was falling apart. He crashed into a protruding hill not far away. The 9 seals of celestial sealing. It's the 9 seals of celestial sealing. The information about the primitive mystic realm appeared in Qin Hao's mind and he was shocked. According to the records, this was an extremely rare training ground among all levels of the primitive secret realm. In the billions of years of history of the vast universe galaxy, the primitive mystic realm had been discovered countless times, but the 9 seals of celestial sealing had only appeared a few times, and they had all appeared in the primitive mystic realm of the heaven celestial stage. This was an extremely cruel place for cultivation. It was much crueler than the turning into a mortal that Qin Hao had thought at first. Turning into a mortal meant that one's cultivation would be sealed. One had to break through the seals layer by layer and obtain the various dust contained in the seals. Then one could step out of this space. There were no other dangers except for the conflicts between practitioners. But the 9 seals of celestial sealing were different. All the practitioners who entered this space would not have their true core strength sealed. Instead, their true core strength would be drained, and they would be transformed into ferocious beasts by the space. I didn't expect to encounter the rare 9 seals of celestial sealing. Isn't this too miserable for the practitioners of the human tribe? Qin Hao, who was knocked dizzy, tightly grabbed onto a crack in the rock and hid in a shelter from the wind. He stared at the pouring rain and frowned as he pondered. He gazed into the distance, but besides the rain he couldn't see anything. He could only hear the rumbling of thunder and the howling of the wind. The 9 seals of celestial sealing. It's the 9 seals of celestial sealing which is rarely seen in millions of years. It's tailor-made for the god tribe. Although it's suppressed, it's stronger than any other tribe. When Qin Hao and the others opened the seal, countless sect relics from all over the primitive mystic realm opened at the same time, even though no one had broken through the 9 barriers. Countless cultivators from the 10 major galaxies were transported to the 9 immortal sealing taboos. When they realized that it was the space of the 9 immortal sealing taboos, the cultivators from the Shen clan were the most excited. Due to their innately powerful bloodlines, they had an absolute advantage in the 9 seals of immortality and transcendent mortal 9 seals. This was especially so in the initial stages of the trial. Oh no! These are the 9 seals of immortality. At this moment, Other than the cultivators who had entered from Qin Hao's side, the human cultivators who had entered from other places were the most terrified. There was no other reason. Among all the major races, the human race was born with the worst and weakest bloodline. Ah. This way, this way. The storm lasted for a short 15 minutes before it came to an abrupt end. Dead silence was restored once again. At this moment Qin Hao quickly climbed up a higher hill and yelled with all his strength. In the distance he saw small figures scattered all over the place. Although he couldn't see their faces clearly, he could still recognize that they were the girls and the others. Fortunately, it's not far away, Qin Hao said comfortingly when he saw them looking at him and running toward him. Why are you so? Long Ting ran over quickly and couldn't help laughing when she saw Qin Hao's sorry state. Why are you so fast? Qin Hao looked at Long Ting in surprise. Although this girl was not far from him, her running speed was more than 3 times faster than Xianxia and the others. Even the hill he was on was reached by Long Ting after a few leaps. I see you are. How dare you? Long Ting, who was laughing, grabbed Qin Hao and said with a red face as she waved her fist coquettishly, Long Mei is mighty. I won't say any more. I'll rely on you to maintain the world's peace for now. Qin Hao, whose drenched Taoist robe was grabbed by Long Ting like a little chick, said pitifully as he hung in the air. That's more like it. It took the girls Han Mei, Pan Donglu, Pan Dongxing, and the others more than 10 minutes to reach a distance of a few miles. Even so, when they arrived they were all panting and sweating. Why are you all fine? Why am I so miserable? Such a strong wind didn't blow you away? Didn't you encounter a rainstorm? Qin Hao asked confusedly. Although the others were also in a sorry state, they were not like Qin Hao, who was covered in mud. Blown away. The girls were also puzzled. Brother Qin, I know what's going on. I've read a detailed record of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, which was once encountered by my ancestor. The storm just now was transformed by our energy. Brother Qin, your true essence is vigorous and your essence, qi and spirit are strong. It should be because you have reached a very high level of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, and triggered a seal that is too strong, Pan Donglu said. Yes, I also saw it. In the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, the stronger the seal, the stronger the seal. The only thing that is not restricted is the origin bloodline. So, Brother Qin, I'm afraid you're not even as strong as us. The strongest here is the God race, and the other races are also stronger than us. Their bloodline origin is strong, Pan Dongxing said. Then am I not very miserable now? Qin Hao glanced at the complacent Long Ting and the expressions of the girls, especially Qin Shui, who slightly raised the corners of her mouth and said gloomily, This is temporary. In the primitive secret realm, once one of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing is opened, all the other transmission points will be opened, which is also to ensure fairness. Moreover, in a short time we should not encounter foreign races. However, we must go deeper as soon as possible. Cultivation and comprehension are the most important things to break through the restrictions, Pan Donglu said. Obviously, she was much more prepared before entering. Yes. Tell us in detail. What we saw was all introductory information, Qin Hao said. Qin Hao and the others saw the introductory information. The detailed information about the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing could only be recorded in the handbooks of the ancestors of the powerful families. The Long family had such a handbook, but even if there was a record of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, Long Ting, this lazy girl, could not have seen it. We are all mortals now, and we have to bear everything as mortals: eat, drink, gurgle, puff. Pan Donglu just mentioned food and drink. Not only Qin Hao but also Fan Dongxing and the girls, almost all of them except for the foodie Long Ting, let out a gurgle sound. Chapter 695. The reason was very simple. Long Ting had just come in after a full meal, and Qin Hao and the others had not eaten for a long time. All their energy had been drained and they had become mortals. It would be strange if they were not hungry. The deeper you go, the stronger the ferocious beasts will be, and the denser the energy of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven will be. There will also be ancient elixirs, immortal caves, ancient tombs, and so on. However, the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing are also the cruelest training grounds in the primitive secret realm. The 9 restrictions are 9 life and death checkpoints. Breaking through one checkpoint and recovering one's strength, you can go deeper. Flowing eastward said, We humans are limited by our bloodline origin and are the weakest race in the 9 restrictions of immortal ceiling. It's okay in the later stages, but in the beginning we can only avoid. Isn't the constitution of the elves worse than ours? Qin Shui asked with a slight frown. It's not the same. Under the 9 restrictions of immortal ceiling, although they are similar to us humans in the beginning, the elves are naturally close to nature and easier to comprehend and break through the restrictions. Especially the innate elves, which are the legendary embryos of Tao. Although there are very few of them, they are extremely powerful. They are the opposite of the Protoss, who have strong bodies. For the 2 races, the Protoss are the strongest in the early stages, and the elves are the strongest in the later stages. They are most suitable for them. Moreover, although the elves are weak in the early stages, they have wings like the winged race and are born with the ability to fly, which ensures their safety in the early stages. The winged race and the elves were all birdmen who were born with the ability to fly. The dark demon race, the insect race and the heavenly demon race were between the Protoss and the elves, and their comprehensive talent was stronger. The ghost race was born with the ability to hide. Under the 9 restrictions of immortal ceiling, ordinary cultivators could not sense their existence, but they were absolutely awesome at self-protection and sneak attacks. The succubus race was born with the ability to create illusions, making people unknowingly fall for it. So, it seems that we humans are the weakest. Yes, we humans don't have any advantage in bloodline talent. In addition to Long Ting, even Qin Hao frowned slightly at this moment. We are no different from mortals now. We have to go deep into the place where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven and earth are thick. Everyone discussed as they hurried forward. Through Pan Dong Lu and Pan Dongxing's detailed introduction, Qin Hao and the others also had a more detailed understanding of the 9 restrictions. Now what they had to do was to quickly pass through the barren land before them and enter the area with the spirit chi of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven so that they could cultivate and comprehend. 2 hours later, a huge mountain range appeared in front of everyone. This mountain range is endless. After passing through it, we should have passed through the desolate area. Huff. Fan Dongxing panted as he spoke. His sweat had long since soaked his clothes, his lips were dry and cracked, and he was hungry. Other than Long Ting, everyone else was almost the same. All of them were exhausted. Moreover, after Pan Dong Lu's detailed introduction as expected, Qin Hao was the most miserable one. As a man, he was actually the last one. He was not even as good as Qin Shui, the 2 beautiful sisters and the 2 old masters. What made Qin Hao even more depressed was that Long Ting had joked about carrying him on her back. It was really shameful. However, after gritting his teeth and persevering until now, although Qin Hao still looked miserable, there was a trace of imperceptible excitement in his eyes. It's so high. I'm afraid it will take a few hours to cross it. Usually we can fly over it in a flash. Do you want to take a rest? Pan Dong Lu said. As he spoke, he looked at Qin Hao. Everyone, including Senior Immortal Han Mei and Senior Immortal Yun Wei, also looked at Qin Hao. Don't look at me. I'm very good. It doesn't matter if I rush up in one breath. Qin Hao wiped the sweat from his face and said domineeringly. After that he walked forward directly. Qin Shui glared at Qin Hao and said secretly, "You want to save face." After 6 hours they finally reached the top of the mountain. What they saw was green. Although there were still undulating mountains in the distance, there were ancient trees and forests, lush grass, full of vitality and vitality. The aura of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, the law of heaven and the ancient origin energy rushed to their faces. The air was filled with a faint fragrance. In the forest, cranes were flying, birds were singing, and the brook was tinkling. Compared with the barren land where they had traveled for 10 hours in a row due to hunger and thirst, this was undoubtedly a paradise. Finally we're out. Rabbit, hurry up. I'm starving. Finally there's food. Water. There's water over there. Excited shouts came from not far away. There were already people who had entered the mountain wilderness before Qin Hao and the others, and they excitedly pounced towards the mountain wilderness. There are spiritual fruits over there. There's water. Hurry up. At the foot of the mountain, only 1,000 meters away, there was a clear small lake. In the middle of the lake there was a small tree swaying in the air. There were a few fruits emitting dense light. Even if they were only in the state of mortals, they could still see them at a glance. They were almost certain that the faint fragrance in the air was emitted from the fruit. There was no doubt that this was the extreme spiritual fruit. Long Ting pinched her nose and took a deep breath. Suddenly her eyes widened. It's the rootless spiritual fruit. The rootless spiritual fruit only appears in the spiritual spring. It contains the purest spiritual qi of heaven and earth and absorbs the law of heaven here. With it, we can comprehend and break through faster. The spiritual spring also contains a trace of. Pan Donglu said. Let's go and grab it. Bang. Long Ting directly stepped on the ground and ran over first. Sister Long Ting, be careful. There must be ferocious beasts in the water. Pan Donglu shouted in surprise. Foodie, when you see food, your speed is really fast. Let's go. Qin Hao glanced at everyone's surprised expression and said. Obviously, although everyone saw that Long Ting's speed was fast, they did not expect it to be so fast. Her speed was definitely 5 times faster than a mortal's. This spiritual fruit belongs to our third group. Everyone else stop. A figure shouted loudly. He rushed over with a group of people. At this moment there were only 2 groups of people. In addition to them there was Qin Hao and the others. Obviously these words were said to Long Ting, Qin Hao and the others. It belongs to whoever grabs it. Long Ting appeared a little later, but she was obviously faster. How could she agree? Junior Sister Long, I didn't expect you to be so fast. However, can you grab it? Everything depends on strength. This is not against the rules. Don't make it difficult for me. After a slight hesitation, the leader of the third group said directly with a trace of cold arrogance in his eyes. He had already recognized Long Ting, Qin Hao and the others. If this were not the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, he might not have said so. But here he did not have to worry about anything. Everyone was mortal, and strength was strength in numbers. Why would they be afraid of Qin Hao? Moreover, if they could get the rootless fruit in advance, they would undoubtedly be able to comprehend and break through faster. As long as they maintained this advantage, the benefits they would obtain in the future would be immeasurable. This was definitely not as simple as a few rootless fruits. Long Ting was slightly stunned. She paused for a moment and looked at Qin Hao and the others behind her. She frowned and said, we only want 9 and the rest are yours. You can drink as much as you want from the spiritual spring. As for the rootless fruit, I can only say sorry. There are only a few dozen in total and we can barely get 1 each. After hesitating for a moment, the leader of the third group said directly and coldly. Originally, because Long Ting and Qin Shui were both genius disciples of the Divine Temple, it was not a big deal to give them 2 or even a few, but now was not the time to be merciful. After all, they were 2 teams. In the short term, because they were in the same place, they would definitely be in a competitive relationship. If they gave Long Ting the fruit and it was eaten by the powerful Qin Hao, wouldn't they be completely suppressed in the future? In that case, we can divide it equally according to the number of people, right? Sorry. Drink some spiritual spring water. You all can leave. We will take this place. The leader of the third group said resolutely, go pick it, what are you waiting for? Yes. The dozens of cultivators who stopped were a little nervous. However, it was every man for himself. With the leader of the Divine Temple's disciples, they were just small soldiers and were not afraid of offending the Fast East sect and the others. This was all within the rules. Little Ting, let them pick it. At this moment Qin Hao said calmly. Hearing Qin Hao's words, Qin Shui, the sisters Han Mei Yunwei and the others all heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that Qin Hao's character would not be able to hold back and flip out, but now the situation was forcing them. Once a conflict broke out, they would only be at a disadvantage. Long Ting glared fiercely at the leader of the third group and forcibly endured it. If it was her, she would not be afraid. Once she snatched it, she would run away. With her current strength and speed, although she could not beat them, running away was not a problem. But Qin Hao, Qin Shui and the others could not run away. Therefore she could only hold back her anger and endure. Wait, let us drink some first so as not to dirty the water. Just as one person was about to rush to the spiritual spring lake, Qin Hao suddenly said. Who? As Qin Hao spoke, he stepped forward. If you don't want to drink, go and pick it. The fifth group leader said coldly. No matter what, he had definitely offended Qin Hao and the others. Therefore, after hearing Qin Hao's words, he did not mind being more thorough. As long as Qin Hao and the others did not drink the spiritual spring, then Qin Hao and the others would not be able to obtain the trace of Heaven Dao Law in the spiritual spring. Wouldn't that be better? Plop. Plop. This is too much. Let's go. We will not lower ourselves to their level. Long Ting said angrily. It's fine, even if we can't drink it, we can soak our feet. Qin Hao smiled faintly and was extremely calm. Qin Shui, the two beautiful sisters, Venerable Han Mei and Venerable Yun Wei, all looked at Qin Hao strangely. Is this still Qin Hao? When did his temper become so good and he could endure it so well? It was just that they were so angry. It was obviously abnormal. Qin Shui walked to Qin Hao's side and said softly, "Don't do anything rash. You are the weakest now. Just wait for the rootless fruit." Qin Hao's lips curled up slightly as he whispered. Fush. Fuck, there's a strange fish. Bang. Quick, a few people come and block it. This is a spirit trout. Our luck is too good, we have just arrived and we have already encountered rootless fruit, spirit trout and spiritual spring lake. Ha. Splash. Splash. Fuck, normally I can kill 10,000 with one finger, but now I am too weak. Quick, a few people come and help. We can at least catch the fish, right? Long Ting said unwillingly. Sorry. Wuxian is also very sorry. I won't say the reason. Anyway, it is very painful to write now and my right hand is swollen. Chapter 696. Leader Blue Maple is really domineering. Look, there are 4 female disciples of the Divine Palace among them. Pan Dong Lu will definitely become a disciple of the Divine Palace, not to mention Qin Hao. That's called confidence. Leader Blue Maple is also a genius in the Divine Palace. He is only at the peak of the medium stage of the Earth Celestial stage. In the future he will not be worse than Chen Lin. There is no need to be afraid of them. It's just within the scope of the rules. If you offend someone, you will definitely offend someone. There is no need to be afraid. You know, under the 9 restrictions of the Celestial Sealing Technique, you will always be ahead. Leader Blue Maple is so ruthless because he naturally treats them as competitors. If they were his weakness, he would not be so ruthless. Who cares about them? Since we have joined, we will act according to orders. This is a competition between them. It has nothing to do with us. Several practitioners who did not enter the water, but automatically formed a protective posture on both sides of Blue Maple. They looked at the cold and arrogant leader of the 3rd Regiment and whispered to each other. Even they did not expect Blue Maple to be so domineering. These people were all from the East Division. Who didn't know Pandong Lu and Pandong Xing? Moreover, they also saw the terrifying strength displayed by Qin Hao when he fought Chen Lin. Long Ting, Qin Shui, and the Leng sisters all had the mark of a disciple of the Divine Palace on their chests, but Blue Maple did not give them any face at all. You, Long Ting clenched her fists angrily. It's okay. Strength is respected. They are also within the scope of the rules, aren't they? Let's go and soak our feet first. Qin Hao did not look at the domineering Blue Maple. He pulled Long Ting and continued to walk toward the small lake. This is too much. Brother Hao, I can't stand it. I will gather people and destroy them. Long Ting said angrily. She was, after all, the captain, and with an expert like Qin Hao as well as Qin Shui and the Leng sisters, the 3 disciples of the temple, if she were to make a call, she would definitely be able to pull in many people. Don't gather people. Let's eat the spirit fruit later. Qin Hao stopped Long Ting with a smile and lowered his voice. You're so weak now. How can you eat? Brother Hao, you can leave first. I will fight with them later. Long Ting said. Hao, don't be rash. Qin Shui also whispered. Hao, forget it. Let's continue forward and look at other places. There might be more spirit fruits. There's no need to fight with them. Han Mei said. Her expression didn't change much. She and Venerable Han Mei had long been accustomed to the law of the jungle in the cultivation world. This wasn't limitless star. With their talent, cultivation, and strength, it was normal for them to encounter this kind of situation in vast universe galaxy. It was just like when they first entered the ruins of their sect. Even a place to cultivate was robbed. How could they not endure such excessive teasing words? Forget it, forget it. Let's go. Long Ting looked at Qin Hao and hesitated for a moment before speaking. If she was alone, she would have run away as soon as she could. However, everyone else was present, which made her afraid. At this moment, Qin Hao's words and expression didn't seem like he was going to restrain himself at all, and he was going to erupt later. This caused Long Ting to not dare say anything too extreme. If she provoked this fellow, then the one to suffer in the end would definitely be them. Hee, Qin Hao smiled and shook his head. He casually picked up a piece of gravel with the tip of his foot. His movement wasn't obvious, but it fell into his hand. At this moment he was at least a few hundred meters away from Lan Feng and the others. They had all become mortals, so the other party definitely couldn't see him. Do you see it? Qin Hao said in a low voice as he gripped a fist-sized rock. The corner of his mouth curled up, and his expression carried a hint of arrogance. What's wrong? Pan Donglu, Pan Dongxing, and the others also gathered around Qin Hao, looking at him in confusion. Break! Qin Hao shouted in a low voice, ready to enjoy the surprised expressions of everyone. However, creak, damn so hard. Can you not be so funny? Qin Shui looked at the embarrassed Qin Hao and directly laughed out loud as she said. Long Ting, the sisters and everyone couldn't help but laugh. Break for me. Creak, brother Hao, we're all mortals now. Lin Ming laughed. Qin Hao's funny behavior made everyone temporarily forget about the suffocation in their hearts. Hey, let's go. Let's not lower ourselves to their level. Long Ting pulled Qin Hao and said. This stone doesn't give me any face. Let's pick another one. Qin Hao said hesitantly. He wanted to show off his skills to make everyone feel at ease, but he didn't expect to expose himself. He didn't want to admit defeat and picked up another stone that looked slightly worse, but the result was still miserable. Strange, this stone looks like an ordinary stone, there's no reason why it can't be broken. Brother mortals, we're mortals now? Pan Dongxing couldn't help but say. He looked at Qin Hao with a respectful gaze, and didn't look down on Qin Hao because he made a fool of himself. In his opinion, Qin Hao might not be able to change his state of mind after becoming a mortal. Leader Lan Feng, a total of 49 fruits. Leader Lan Feng, this spirit trout is too slippery, it's not easy to catch. Let's eat the rootless fruit and cultivate before catching it. At this moment the cultivator in charge of harvesting the rootless fruit succeeded, and the other cultivators immediately gave up on catching the spirit trout. They were all mortals now, and it was difficult to catch a spirit trout that was as long as a person, even if there were many of them. You guys wait here. At this moment, Qin Hao gave up on pinching the stone and looked in Lan Feng's direction as he spoke to everyone. After he finished speaking he was about to walk over. Forget it, they have more people, we can't win. Long Ting grabbed that unwilling Qin Hao. With her strength she was definitely able to pick him up like an eagle picking up a little chick. However, what Long Ting did not expect was that this time, Qin Hao only lightly reached out and grabbed Long Ting's hand. It was as if he was holding on to a steel bar. Don't worry. When have I ever done something I'm not confident in? Those rotten stones were really too hard just now. Just watch. Don't tell me you've comprehended the first seal? Long Ting asked in astonishment. That's not it. Qin Hao smiled and let go of Long Ting's hand. He turned around and walked towards Lan Feng's group. At this moment Lan Feng and the others had already gathered together excitedly to distribute the rootless fruits. I'll go with you. Long Ting said. I'll go too. As a man, Fan Dongxing had no reason not to go. Since we're going to snatch, then let's go together. Qin Shui and the others knew that they couldn't stop Qin Hao, and felt that Qin Hao was definitely confident, so they spoke one after another. Qin Hao hesitated for a moment but didn't stop them. He said, follow behind me. It's so fragrant, just the smell alone contains the pure energy of heaven and earth and the laws of heaven and earth. If we can eat one, it will definitely allow us to quickly comprehend some things. Leader Lan Feng, you can distribute it. Gulp, gulp. Everyone's eyes lit up as they stared at the rootless fruits, which were emitting a dense aura and a strong fragrance. They swallowed their saliva. Yes, Leader Lan Feng, let's distribute it quickly, I'm starving. Leader Lan Feng? Everyone's gaze turned towards Lan Feng, but they discovered that Lan Feng was frowning and looking into the distance. What, you're not convinced? Lan Feng's gaze was cold as he stared at Qin Hao, who was slowly walking towards them. He asked coldly, you are indeed very strong, but you have to understand the current situation. Otherwise, I don't mind teaching all of you a lesson. Is that so? Qin Hao calmly replied. His pace didn't change as he walked forward step by step. Stop. Don't force me to make a move. This is allowed by the rules. Lan Feng frowned. The others also stared at Qin Hao. Even though they weren't as arrogant as Lan Feng, their gazes were still filled with displeasure. Why don't you try? Qin Hao continued to walk forward calmly. He gestured for Long Ting and the others to stop. You're courting death. Cripple this brat for me. Leader Lan Feng. Hearing Lan Feng's words, the cultivators beside him didn't immediately carry out the order. Instead they looked at him a little apprehensively. One of them said, "Everyone knows each other. Whoever is stronger will get the fruit. Just teach them a lesson and forget about it." Yes, Leader Lan Feng, just let them know how difficult it is and retreat. These people obviously had some misgivings. After all, the rules were the rules. If they really crippled the 4 temple disciples and the Pan-East current, they would definitely be in trouble in the future. They didn't have the same background as Lan Feng. Shut up. Do you still want the spirit fruit or not? This is an order. You're just executors. Even if the sky falls, Lan Feng, will hold it up. With the 9 seals of immortal sealing, do you think we're afraid of him? Whoever defeats him will get 2 rootless fruits. I'll do it. You don't know what's good for you. Strength is everything. Under such circumstances you still want to snatch it? I don't care who you are. Whoosh. A burly man with a ferocious face had been waiting for Lan Feng's words. When he heard that there were 2 rootless fruits, he immediately jumped out. This guy was obviously a demon cultivator. The blood of a demon beast flowed in his body. His body was 2 heads taller than Chen Hao and he looked like a giant. Crawl down for me. The fierce man opened his powerful arms, looked down at Chen Hao and slapped him directly. Slap. Chen Hao suddenly raised his head and slapped him hard in the face. The huge figure rolled directly. He didn't even have time to scream. He flew 3 meters away and lay there motionless. He fainted directly. The crisp and loud sound of the slap stunned everyone. Was this a mortal? In everyone's opinion, the fierce man who stood out could crush the slender and petite Chen Hao to death. However, the result was that he was sent flying by a slap from Chen Hao. Chen Hao's footsteps didn't even stop. His expression was calm, but the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. He looked straight at Lan Feng and approached him step by step. Go, all of you, go. Lan Feng was also shocked by Chen Hao's slap. He was even more shocked by Chen Hao's calm expression and mocking gaze. He was a little panicked as he gave the order. Bang! Just as the shocked crowd was about to rush forward, Chen Hao suddenly took a step forward and rushed forward. His speed was incomparable to that of an ordinary mortal. He quickly closed in on Lan Feng. Chapter 697. Come on. Stop him for me. Flap, flap, slap, Chen Hao's footwork was light and agile. He slapped Lan Feng repeatedly with his right hand. Every time he slapped Lan Feng would fly out. After 5 or 6 consecutive slaps, everyone was stunned. They didn't understand why Chen Hao, who was also a human, could be so ferocious even though he was not strong under the celestial sealing restrictions. This was real strength, not a simple technique. Because of this, it was even more terrifying. After all, everyone present was an ace at the Earth's celestial stage. Even if they had become mortals because of the celestial sealing restrictions, their eyesight, reaction, and basic combat skills were absolutely solid. There was no reason for the gap between them to be so big. In a moment, everyone stopped in their tracks in fear and retreated in fear. All of them kept quiet out of fear. This was simply a ferocious beast in human form. Come on. Chen Hao grabbed Lan Feng's neck with one hand and lifted him into the air like a chicken. Lan Feng, who was cold and domineering just now, was so frightened that his face turned pale and he struggled to roar. Slap, slap, slap. Chen Hao didn't say a word. He controlled his strength and slapped Lan Feng several times in a row. Lan Feng was dizzy and saw stars. In a flash, Lan Feng's face was swollen like a pig's head. Many of his teeth were knocked out and his mouth was full of blood. He couldn't even scream. Bang! Immediately, Chen Hao threw Lan Feng up and kicked him straight. Lan Feng was kicked 10 meters away and fell to the ground like a dead dog. Get lost. Chen Hao's gaze swept over the others as he calmly spat out a word. But no one dared to make a sound. The situation was compelling. All of them kept quiet out of fear and retreated dejectedly. Lan Feng, who hadn't fainted yet, struggled to stand up. However, he clutched his chest, which was full of broken ribs, and howled at Chen Hao with his mouth full of air. Li Gonghua light. No one understood what he said. Disappear in 1 minute, Chen Hao said calmly. At this moment, compared to the fierce man, Chen Hao's figure was still small. However, in the eyes of the crowd, he had become a ferocious beast in human form. Moreover, he was a cold-blooded and merciless beast. Especially his calm tone and expression, it made people feel that even if he killed them he would not blink an eye. In an instant, everyone, including Lan Feng, who was still talking nonsense, suppressed their anger and left in a hurry with people supporting them. What are you waiting for? Come and eat, come and eat. I'm so hungry. At this moment, Qin Hao's face changed faster than flipping a book. He returned to normal and sat cross-legged in front of a pile of rootless fruits. He picked them up and began to eat them. It's really sweet and tastes good. It is indeed a special spirit fruit. The moment the fruit entered his stomach, Qin Hao felt a pure stream of heat appear in his dantian. At the same time he could clearly feel the mysterious laws, although very weak. Brother Qin Hao quickly tried to refine and comprehend after eating one. The spirit fruit that grows under the 9 restrictions of celestial sealing is not just a spirit fruit. It can naturally absorb the laws of heaven here. If we eat it, it can help us to comprehend and break through faster. However, we are mortals now, so we can't eat too much at once. Fan Dongxing reminded. Crunch crunch. Before the crowd could eat, Long Ting rushed over without hesitation. She held one fruit in each hand and ignored Fan Dongxing's reminder. Well, master, come and eat. If you wait any longer, the foodie will finish it all. Then you two eat too. Don't be shy. Qin Hao handed 2 fruits to Fan Dongxing. Thank you, brother. You're the foodie. Crunch crunch. Long Ting glared at Qin Hao without concealing anything, but did not stop eating. Brother Qin Hao, there is a cave over there. Let's cultivate here for a while before moving forward. Such a place is rare. It is completely luck that we encountered it. It is better to improve our strength first. Fan Dongxing took the spirit fruit and handed one to Fan Donglu, but he did not eat it directly. Instead he pointed to a man-made cave across the small lake and said, well, this place is really good. There is a spirit spring and spirit trout. Let's cultivate here for a while. Qin Hao replied. The entrance of the cave wasn't large, but the inside of the cave was very large. Moreover, it wasn't completely man-made. Inside there was a small stream that connected to the spirit spring lake. It was clearly the upper reaches of the spirit spring and it was very deep inside. It was rugged and winding. On both sides of the cave, there were many independent rooms that were man-made. Inside the rooms, there were even low-lying areas that formed spirit springs. Inside each cave there were actually runes protecting it. The ceiling of the cave was inlaid with night crystals that illuminated the inside of the cave, making it as bright as day. Obviously, this was a place specially for cultivators to meditate in seclusion. Qin Hao took out 6 rootless fruits and gave them to Fan Donglu and Fan Dongxing, but the 2 refused. Finally, Qin Hao said, "Don't drag us down." The 2 were embarrassed to accept it. How did you recover so fast? Can't the 9 seals of Immortal Seal seal you? After Fan Dongxing and Fan Donglu chose a small cave and began to refine the spirit medicine, Qin Shui, who had been holding back for a long time, finally asked. I know what's going on. It must be his physical body that evolved automatically. Long Ting said. It seems so. My physical strength is still recovering and it's recovering faster and faster. But there is still no true essence in mind power. Qin Hao said. Originally he was the most miserable and the weakest. At the beginning of the journey he was the most miserable and the most depressed. He was a dignified man, but he was not even as good as Senior Immortal Han Mei and Senior Immortal Yun Wei. But gradually he found that his strength was getting stronger and faster. At that time, Qin Hao knew that his abnormal genes and physical body began to evolve automatically to adapt to this space. In fact, when he started to climb the mountain his strength was far beyond ordinary people. It was just that he was sensing this subtle change and did not show it. Looking at you two, the 2 of us are really old. Let's go find a cave to cultivate. You 2 can chat for a while and start cultivating too. Don't waste the medicinal power, this rootless fruit is very precious. Han Mei Venerable said. Yes, more than 10 years ago you were still little guys in front of us. Now Master has to look up to you. Master, don't think like that. How old are you? In the cultivation world, how can you be considered old if you are less than 1,000 years old? In the past, the conditions of the Wuji star were not good. But in the future with us here we can get whatever you want. You can eat the rootless fruit like a fruit. Later I will catch some spirit trout. When I have mind power and true essence I will open the space. There are many good things. In the future you can enjoy it as much as you want. Ha ha, Qin Hao said. Well, you don't have to comfort us. Master's brother Hao is telling the truth. You're only a few hundred years old. Don't think like that. Otherwise you will lose your Taoist heart. Not to mention the Wuji star, even in the vast universe galaxy, more than half of the cultivators are stuck in the Earth's celestial stage. Many of them are thousands of years old. In fact, you are limited by the Wuji star. You don't have powerful unique skills and the support of your foundation. Otherwise you would not be worse than anyone else. Look, the disciples you taught have all become disciples of the Holy Temple. This is much stronger than any of the top clans. Long Ting actually spoke in a rare serious tone. The little Shui Huan Huan and Lei Lei, we have some credit. How are we didn't teach anything. Brother Hao is a freak. He is an exception. What are you talking about? Okay, let's go. What are you doing? Taking a bath. Don't you see that I am covered in mud? When Senior Celestial Han Mei and Senior Celestial Yun Wei left, Qin Hao took off his clothes in front of Qin Shui, Long Ting and the sisters. Let's go. Qin Shui said angrily. Ha ha ha. Long Ting laughed foolishly. Brother Hao, give me your clothes. I will help you wash them. The well-behaved Ling Ning Huan blushed and took the Taoist robe from Qin Hao. Huan Huan is the best. Do you want this too? Plop. You are murdering your husband. Qin Shui stretched out her hand and pushed the shameless Qin Hao into the spiritual spring. Although she knew that he would not take off his shorts, she could not stand his flirting. You deserve it. Let's go. The four girls laughed and walked out. Voila. After the four girls left, Qin Hao came out of the water. He wiped the water droplets on his face and smiled. Immediately he sat cross-legged in the spiritual spring and began to cultivate happily. The 9 restrictions of celestial sealing obviously can't suppress my body. As long as I can comprehend the special great Tao law here, I can quickly control my true essence in psychokinesis. However, I must advance step by step. The medicinal power of the rootless fruit can't be wasted. Qin Hao sensed that the rootless fruit's energy and great Tao law in his dantian were becoming more and more active. His mind slowly integrated into it. Tao law nature. Even if he did not have the protection of a freak body that could evolve on its own, Qin Hao did not feel any pressure. He followed his heart and cultivated naturally. This did not mean that he wanted to slow down the pace of cultivation, nor did it mean that he gave up on exploiting himself. It was a kind of mental detachment. Just like Lan Feng and the others just now, Qin Hao's calmness was not an act. In fact, he did not take them seriously at all. Anger? Those people were not worthy of his anger. When it was time to attack, he would attack. Of course, if his physical strength did not recover at all, he could only endure it. There was no need to be a hot-headed prick. Phew. After a full 4 hours, Qin Hao slowly opened his eyes. I can't even store a bit of true essence. The heavenly Tao law contained in the rootless fruit is incomplete. It seems that it is impossible to comprehend it in a short period of time. The spirit trout should also have heavenly Tao law fragments. Let's catch one and try. Splash. Qin Hao jumped out of the spiritual spring and came to the entrance of the cave. He saw the Taoist robe that Ling Ning Huan had placed at the entrance of the cave. Chapter 698. After an hour, what made Qin Hao depressed was that after losing the rootless fruit in the spirit spring lake, the spirit trout had hidden somewhere. Even though Qin Hao had recovered some physical strength, he could not find any trace of the spirit trout in the cool and deep lake water, let alone catch it. Fortunately, there is no shortage of ordinary fruits and animals here, so I don't have to worry about food and clothing. Qin Hao looked up at the sky, then down at the ground, and then at the lush vegetation in the depths and thought to himself. A complete law is dissolved in heaven and earth and is omnipresent. If I want to recover my spiritual power, I can only rely on my own comprehension. In fact, after swallowing the rootless fruit, Qin Hao also found that although the fragments of the heavenly Tao contained in it could be directly in his dantian, he still had to rely on himself to comprehend it. The only advantage was that it shortened the time to catch the fragments of the heavenly Tao. These fragments of the heavenly Tao were extremely mysterious and complicated, and definitely could not be comprehended in a short time. As Fan Dongxing and Fan Donglu said, in the first level of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, there were not many places with cave residences and spirit springs for cultivation. If a cultivator was obtained by the spirit fruits and spirit herbs and really took this as a shortcut, he would probably end up in a miserable state. Since it's a place of inheritance, there's no reason for it to be obtained through spirit herbs. When this training space was set up, it was definitely impossible to integrate the heavenly Tao into the spirit herbs. The reason it's here now is because the spirit herbs have naturally absorbed part of the heavenly Tao fragments after a long time. To be precise, it's the result of their evolution. Just like how my physical body evolves with the environment. It must be like this. Just as Chen Hao stood in front of the cave and pondered, the others also came out of their cultivation state. Obviously, they also found that they had obtained the fragments of the heavenly Tao but could not comprehend it for the time being. After a discussion with the others, Chen Hao really decided to focus on cultivation and comprehension here for the time being. Little Wu, you're finally here. In the sect ruins, two figures sat cross-legged and looked at Helian Wuxia, who had just arrived. This was already the second year since Chen Hao and the others entered the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing. Tentai Lian and Xia Yu had already arrived. At this moment, there were no other cultivators in the entire sect ruins. They had not seen each other for more than 10 years in the primal secret realm. Naturally, they were very excited to see each other again. At this moment, Helian Wuxia became more and more ethereal like an immortal. Her beautiful hair fluttered and her small face that was as cold as the moon seemed to be shrouded by a layer of faint moonlight. It allowed people to clearly see that absolutely beautiful appearance, but in the blink of an eye, it was as if they hadn't seen anything at all. Xiao Wu, what's going on? Tentai Lian and Xia Yu asked in surprise. At this moment, Tentai Lian had already coiled up her fine black hair, clearly telling everyone that she was already a woman. In fact, this was the first time she had truly fused her yin and yang with Chen Hao. After losing her primordial yin body, she was already a woman. However, she did not tie up her long hair. It wasn't until the last time she really walked together with Chen Hao that she changed her hairstyle. She, who was originally otherworldly and elegant, had an additional trace of tranquility and gentleness. Using modern words to describe her, she was a beautiful young married woman that attracted endless fanciful thoughts. The picturesque Xia Yu's pure and flawless eyes had not changed in the slightest for many years. Not to mention that she originally had a face that could topple cities. Even if she didn't, just her pair of beautiful eyes could mesmerize all living beings. My power of reincarnation is becoming stronger and stronger. Xiao Lian Yu, I'm a little scared. Helian Wuxia, who had landed beside the two, directly expressed her worries. This was the first time she had seen a familiar sister in more than 10 years. During this period of time, especially after she had boarded the aircraft and rushed here, when she was meditating and cultivating on the aircraft, some scenes that did not belong to her at all would automatically appear in her mind. It was as if thousands of lifetimes had floated and sunk, seriously disturbing her tranquil heart lake. However, not only did it not affect her cultivation, it instead became even more terrifying. At this moment, with every breath she took, Helian Wuxia felt as if she had become one with heaven and earth. Her body was filled with energy that was as vast as the mountains and seas. She was certain that as long as she was willing, she could trigger the heavenly punishment at any time and step into the heavenly immortal realm here. However, she did not dare to. Xiao Wu, your aura is very strong, so strong that it scares me. What are you afraid of? Xia Yu asked, puzzled. I'm afraid that I'm no longer myself. Helian Wuxia expressed her worries. How can that be? We've asked the experts who guided our cultivation. Although the power of reincarnation is the most mysterious power in heaven and earth, the awakening of 100 lifetimes of reincarnation, it's only the awakening of power. It will definitely not affect you. No, this is different from what the seniors who guided us said. I've awakened not only the power of reincarnation, but also some scenes that do not belong to me at all. There are many. Otherwise, I would be able to trigger the heavenly punishment and step into the heavenly immortal realm now. Helian Wuxia said. As she spoke, her gaze slowly swept across the entire sect ruins. Suddenly, she let out a cry of surprise. What's wrong? Tentai Lian and Xia Yu frowned and asked. They turned around and followed Helian Wuxia's gaze, but there was nothing unusual. However, Helian Wuxia seemed to have not heard their question. She stared blankly at the sect ruins. Rumble. In her mind, the collapsed palace was uprooted from the ground and quickly reassembled. One by one, Cultivators dressed in ancient attire, young and old, appeared inside and outside the palace. Some were singing and laughing and some were sitting cross-legged in cultivation. Every palace exuded an immortal aura that Hellion Wuxi had never sensed before in the vast universe galaxy. In the martial arts arena, there were young disciples competing. There were countless youths watching. Experts with white hair and beards who looked like old immortals were holding down the fort. Rumble. Suddenly the heavens and earth darkened. An extremely terrifying aura of destruction appeared outside the entire sect. It was also at this moment that all the cultivators looked towards the void. Immediately, all the scenes in Hellion Wuxi's mind disappeared. It was as if she had entered a starry void. There was no sound, no energy. There was only a young girl whose face could not be seen clearly. She was surrounded by several old men sitting cross-legged in the middle. The faces of the old men could be seen clearly, as if they were telling the young girl something. Suddenly the old men moved again. Hellion Wuxi's eyes widened. What did she see? He saw the stars and the moon. Every old man could take the stars into their hands with a wave of their hands. Reincarnation is immortal. Go, child. After the young girl sitting cross-legged in the middle turned into a bright flowing light and disappeared into the endless void, a gentle and old voice appeared in Hellion Wuxi's mind. Although it was a language that Hellion Wuxi had never heard before, she clearly understood what the old man was saying. Xiao Wu, Xiao Wu. Hellion Wuxi didn't know why, but her beautiful eyes were already filled with sparkling and translucent tears. That intermittent scene was like a memory hidden in her mind. Especially that gentle and old voice at the end, it was more like it was narrating a kind of vicissitudes and solemnity that existed since ancient times. That young girl whose face couldn't be seen clearly made Hellion Wuxi feel that she was inextricably linked to herself. Everything was like a movie. She wasn't sad, but from the depths of her heart, it was as if she was infected by the subconscious sadness. What exactly happened? Xiao Wu, what happened? What did you see? Why are you crying? Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian asked. Although the two of them did not see anything abnormal at all and only Hellion Wuxi was abnormal at this moment, the two of them knew that something must have happened to Hellion Wuxi. I don't know. All the illusions disappeared. In front of her was still the broken and desolate sect ruins that were filled with an ancient aura. Hellion Wuxi, who felt like she was in a dream, still had tears in her eyes as she murmured. During this period of time her mind was restless. The power of reincarnation was crazily awakening. She had encountered countless similar scenes, but they had never been so real. Although the scenes today were still intermittent, they were relatively complete, especially the young girl, the old man, and the last voice that appeared at the end. Xiao Wu, don't worry. The power of reincarnation will definitely not let you become another person. Although we don't know what the power of reincarnation is, in 100 reincarnations, every life is a new beginning, and it is also you. Perhaps there will be some deep memories that will be awakened with the power of reincarnation. Just like the absolute art that you awakened, it will be passed on to you. But those are all memories of the past, aren't they? Don't be afraid. Tantai Lian held Huyen's cold little hand tightly and comforted her. Yes, Xiao Wu, don't be afraid. Xia Yu also said. Although the two of them did not know what Hellion Wuxi saw or sensed, they knew that she must have been affected by the power of reincarnation. Xiao Lian, I want to walk around here. Hellion Wuxi heard the two of them and regained a trace of calmness. Before coming, the flying device's AI had already told her the situation here in advance. She knew that Qin Hao and the others had already been transported into a training space. They just had to wait here. We'll accompany you. No need, I want to walk around by myself. Hiss. After Hellion Wuxi finished speaking, her figure flashed and turned into a stream of light, walking towards the barren and broken ruins. Although all the illusions had disappeared at this moment, they still appeared vividly in her mind. She landed in front of a collapsed palace and seemed to subconsciously search for something. When she found a rusty plaque in the ruins of the palace, she waved her hand and released a gentle energy to clear the stains and dust on it. Then she saw 5 ancient characters that she didn't recognize at all. She had never heard of them before. But it was these 5 words that made Hellion Wuxi widen her eyes in a daze. Under the control of her subconscious, tears once again flowed uncontrollably. Chapter 699. Why? Helian Wuxi stared at the 5 ancient characters on the plaque. Her voice trembled as she muttered to herself. She didn't recognize them, and she was sure that she had never really seen these 5 ancient characters that had been buried in the dust for who knew how many years. However, the image that had just appeared in her mind was like an illusion, and she clearly saw the original appearance of the palace in front of her in the past. On the plaque there were these 5 characters. Is there really a past and present life? Is this world and this sect really related to me? Helian Wuxi was certain that all of this was because she had awakened the power of reincarnation. She wanted to understand what was going on, but other than the images that appeared in her subconscious mind, as well as the sadness that made her cry uncontrollably, she was unable to obtain any other information. She flipped through the ruins one after another and found broken and decayed plaques one after another. She saw ancient words that were exactly the same as the scene that had just appeared in her mind. This made her understand that the scene that had just appeared in her mind was definitely not an illusion, but something that had truly existed. Little Wu, what's going on? When Helian Wuxi returned to Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian's side in a daze, Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian asked a little worriedly. Just now, although they didn't accompany Helian Wuxi, they looked at her from afar. Helian Wuxi's appearance made them faintly worried. I saw many scenes. The scenes of the sect ruins in the past when they were still intact. The names of each collapsed palace were not wrong. I saw before the universe collapsed, a few old men used the great magical power of picking the stars and catching the moon to do something to a girl. They said, reincarnation is eternal, go child. When Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian heard Helian Wuxi's words, they were stunned speechless. Because of Helian Wuxi, they also had some understanding of 100 reincarnations. This was a kind of mysterious power that was similar to a bloodline inheritance, but also superior to a bloodline inheritance. Any cultivator who could awaken the power of reincarnation contained the terrifying energy accumulated from 100 reincarnations. As one's realm increased, this energy would gradually awaken and become one's own use. At the same time, it would be accompanied by the awakening of a unique inheritance. However, under normal circumstances, it wouldn't involve any memories of past experiences. Eternal reincarnation. Do you think I'm that girl? In that case, would I still be me? Helian Wuxi asked apprehensively. Even though she knew that Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian wouldn't give her an answer, if she didn't say it now, she would feel very sad, very worried, and very afraid. She wanted to pour her heart out. That won't happen. Xiao Wu, don't worry so much. You have to know that this universe has been destroyed for an unknown number of years. Tens of millions of years or even billions of years. How many reincarnations would that take? If you were her, you would have already completely awakened. Xia Yuyu said. That's right. Perhaps, it's the influence of the remnant aura of the ancient sect. Your physique is more suitable for this place, causing the scenes of the past to appear in your mind. The most likely reason is that your physique is similar to that girl's, said Tantai Lian. Perhaps, don't think too much. Yes. Helian Wuxi sat down cross-legged. Although what the two of them said made sense, she knew that her situation wasn't that simple. After the 3 of them chatted for a while, they entered a state of cultivation. However, in less than 2 hours, Tantai Lian and Xia Yuyu suddenly sensed an extremely strong energy fluctuation, which made the 2 of them open their eyes in astonishment. Immediately they also saw the astonished Helian Wuxi. The 3 of them were actually wrapped up in layers upon layers of mysterious runes. The area of 300 meters around them became extremely resplendent 7-colored rays of light. Moreover, the fluctuation became more and more intense. What's going on? Did the restriction open? Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian asked in surprise. The place where they sat cross-legged to cultivate was the core of the 9 layers of restriction that Qin Hao and the others had activated before they entered the sacred training ground. However, when they arrived, it had already closed. But now, such a strong fluctuation actually gushed out, and the 2 of them instantly sensed that the source was Helian Wuxi. That's not right. According to Xiaoxi's information, a space-time door was opened here before. It was a sacred training ground that was transmitted to this universe. How could it be opened again? Could it be that they're coming back? Come with me. We can go in. Helian Wuxi didn't have time to answer the 2 of them and directly urged them. Although Xia Yuyu and Tantai Lian didn't understand what was going on, they hastily rushed to Helian Wuxi's side. The moment the three of them grabbed her, a seven-colored pillar of light suddenly enveloped the three of them. The space distorted and they disappeared from the sect's ruins. Crack, 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 rumble, rumble, rumble. At the same time, the entire space of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions suddenly shook violently. The energy of heaven and earth roared and the heavenly Tao reversed. Terrifying thunderbolts filled the entire space of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions. Violent winds and torrential rain, mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. How can it be? Someone just broke through the 3rd restriction. How can the 4th one be here? All the cultivators, no matter where they were, no matter what they were doing at this moment, restrained their auras to avoid the terrifying shaking of heaven and earth. No one would have thought that in 2 years, only a few cultivators had broken through the 3rd restriction. Most people hadn't even comprehended the 2nd restriction, let alone the 3rd one. However, at this moment, the terrifying shaking of heaven and earth and the changes in the heavenly Tao's laws were enough to prove that someone had broken through the 4th restriction. In the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions, once someone broke through a restriction, it would cause the entire space to shake and the heavenly Tao's laws would change, and the 2nd restriction would open. Crack. Rumble. What no one expected was that as soon as the shaking of heaven and earth ended, the heavenly Tao's laws changed again. Shockingly, someone had comprehended the 5th restriction. However, this was still not the end. When the 9th restriction was completely opened, the space of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions became one, and there were no more barriers. All the cultivators stared blankly at the sky. They didn't dare to believe this was real. In theory, this shouldn't happen no matter what. It was simply impossible for it to happen. No matter how high one's comprehension was, no matter how talented one was, there was no way one could completely comprehend the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions in such a short time. After all, one had to comprehend and break through the restrictions one by one. How could one break through consecutively? However, this was the reality. Everyone sensed the changes in the heavenly Tao's laws. Apart from shock, they also felt an indescribable sense of panic. Who could be so powerful? When the 4th restriction was broken. Flying immortals. Immortals, 3 immortals. Look. What? While all the cultivators in the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions were immersed in shock, Qin Hao and many of the other cultivators who had been teleported in saw an unbelievable scene. In the 9 heavens, amid the terrifying lightning, a rainbow-colored light streaked across the sky like a shooting star. 3 dreamlike figures could be vaguely seen. They were wrapped in the rainbow-colored light, and it was as if immortals had descended from the 9 heavens. One of the figures was sitting cross-legged, and the other 2 were gazing at her from the side. Soon they were heading toward the depths of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions. They've broken through the 4th restriction of the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions. The nearby cultivators who saw the strange phenomenon in the sky were extremely shocked. Just from the lightning surrounding the 3 girls in the 9 heavens, they were certain that one of the 3 had broken through the 4th restriction. When the 4th restriction was broken, Qin Hao and the others, who were sitting cross-legged and cultivating in a cave abode on a mountain peak, rushed out of the cave abode and stared at the void. Even Qin Hao was extremely shocked at this moment. He had not been the first to break through any of the first 3 restrictions. Although he had comprehended it not long after the others had broken through, he had not been the first to break through. This was a situation that Qin Hao had never encountered before. One had to know that his comprehension ability was quite impressive, and it was also one of the aspects that he was most confident in. However, in front of the geniuses of the 10 major galaxies, he had lost his previous advantage, which also made him feel pressured. At this moment he had not even fully comprehended the 3rd restriction, but the 4th restriction had been broken first. The 9 celestial ceiling restrictions had 9 layers of space. If the 1st restriction was broken through, the space before that restriction would be merged into one, and the heavenly Tao's laws would change. However, this did not mean that every cultivator only broke through the space barrier. Whether the 9 celestial ceiling restrictions had restrictions, and how many restrictions there were, still depended on the individual's breakthrough. This is too fast. Someone was the first to break through the 3rd restriction 3 days ago, and now he has broken through the 4th restriction. Must be the same person. How could it be so fast? Long Ting said in surprise. I'm afraid the geniuses of the 10 major galaxies are far beyond our expectations. Qin Shui stared at the changing wind and clouds, frowned slightly and said softly. As she spoke, she looked at Qin Hao, who also had a solemn expression on his face. She knew very well that Qin Hao, who had never lost to anyone in any aspect, must have more than she had thought. The 9 celestial sealing restrictions have no advantage for the human clan. You don't have to worry about anything. The top experts of the human clan are the strongest in the 10 major galaxies. The higher the realm, the stronger the advantage of the human clan. Venerable Han Mei said softly. Although her and Venerable Yun Wei's cultivation was almost at the bottom of the group, their mentality was the best. They were afraid that Qin Hao and the others would be shocked, so they comforted them. Rumble, ah? Suddenly, a dazzling 7-colored light surrounded by lightning appeared in the sky above Qin Hao and the others. It was as fast as a shooting star, but 3 dreamlike figures could be vaguely seen. Surrounded by lightning and turbulent core. They have comprehended the 4th restriction. Why do I feel a little familiar? Qin Shui said in surprise. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 700. It's Xiaolian. And Xiaowu and Yuyu. Qin Hao's heart skipped a beat. Although he was about to break through the 3rd restriction of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, the increase in his perception was limited. He could only see the silhouettes of the 3 dreamy figures wrapped in colorful light and thousands of thunderbolts. He could not see them clearly at all. Not to mention him, even Qin Shui, who had awakened her ability to perceive, couldn't sense the slightest bit. She only felt that the 3 hazy figures were somewhat familiar, but Qin Hao instantly determined the identities of the 3 people. It was because of the Phoenix inheritance. Bam! Qin Hao stomped his foot and immediately rose up like a cannonball. His powerful physical strength created a huge pit in the hard rock ground, sending gravel flying. At the same time, he sent out messages to summon the Phoenix in his mind, trying to stop Tantai Lian and the others. But no matter how fast he was, no matter how hard he tried to summon them, there was no effect at all. The 3 people who were like shooting stars streaking across the 9 heavens didn't seem to know of his existence at all. They still maintained the same posture and instantly disappeared into the distance. After that, just like the other cultivators, Qin Hao was shocked by the continuous and successive tremors of the heavens and the earth. What was going on? Helian Wuxia, Xia Yuyu, and Tantai Lian should not have made it to the gate of time and space. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to appear here. However, they had appeared. It would be fine if they just appeared, but why were they wrapped in the Thunder Dao Law and entered so quickly as if they were immortals and broke through the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing? How are you sure it's Xiaolian and the others? At this moment, Qin Shui and the others rushed to Qin Hao's side and asked. The aura of the Phoenix inheritance can't be wrong. Xiaolian can confirm it. Although she can't see clearly, the other 2 are Xiaowu and Yuyu. According to Xiaoji's calculations, if they hurry, they should have met up about now. Qin Hao said. How could they come in? And, they must have broken through the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing. Is that possible? Long Ting stared at the still shaking void and asked in confusion. Qin Hao looked at everyone and asked, do you feel the aura of the 7-colored light and the law of lightning? They clearly passed by us, but they don't seem to be in the same world. Feels like the aura of a space-time door? It seems so. I also sensed the aura of the space-time gate. The one sitting cross-legged should be Xiao Wu. Could it be related to Xiao Wu's reincarnation power? It shouldn't be. Although the power of samsara is profound, it shouldn't be able to continuously break through the 9 restrictions. Qin Shui frowned as she pondered. Qin Hao also thought of this possibility, but like Qin Shui, he rejected it. Everyone discussed for a while, but to no avail. This was completely beyond their understanding. If Qin Hao could communicate with the old god, he might be able to deduce what was going on. Unfortunately, even though he was close to breaking through the 3rd hex and possessed a certain amount of mana and telekinesis, he was still unable to communicate with the old god. He could only give up and put the matter aside for now. Either way, it was still good news to know that the 3 of them had made it to the core of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world. At the end of the gray space, specks of blue will-o'-the-wisps appeared. A well-preserved group of ancient palaces could be vaguely seen. The palaces and pavilions were carved with dragons and phoenixes, and the profound aura of the heavenly Tao filled the air. From afar, many cultivators could be seen flying in. "We're here." At this moment, apart from Chen Hao, who was still relatively calm, Chen Shui, Long Ting, and the others all took a deep breath. Their expressions were solemn and their fighting spirit surged. They had already experienced such a scene twice. Every time someone broke through the first layer of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world, a huge group of palaces would be opened in front of them. To be precise, it should be an ancient city. According to everyone's estimation, this should be a ring-shaped city. Cultivators from all directions could enter as long as they went deep. Of course, the prerequisite was that someone had broken through the 9 restrictions of the city. Otherwise, they would be sealed by a powerful barrier and unable to enter. Such a situation was like a myriad of streams converging, gathering layer by layer. When they reached the last layer of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world, all the cultivators who had entered would probably gather there. A fierce battle was inevitable. On the first and second layers, the situation was still fine because it was too large. The cultivators they encountered were basically human. Although they had a few conflicts with ignorant fellows, they could easily deal with them. Although they had heard that some people had encountered foreign races, Chen Hao and the others did not encounter them. This is the third layer. Conflicts are inevitable. We might encounter foreign races. Everyone be careful, Chen Hao said. The previous 2 situations had already made everyone clear that the situation of the 9 restrictions of the immortal sealing world was very different from the situation recorded in the information. After a long time in the wilderness, although many powerful demon beasts and spiritual items of heaven and earth had been born, the true treasure land was still in the palaces on each layer. All kinds of ancient treasures, secret manuals, pills, and so on were spread throughout every palace. It was as if this holy land of training had become one of the inheritance points deliberately left behind before the collapse of the universe. In order to obtain it, besides one's own talent, one needed great strength to deter others. Big brother Chen Hao, none of us have fully comprehended the 3rd restriction. I'm afraid we can't enter any of the palaces. Is it appropriate for us to go now? Fan Dongxing said. It's fine. We haven't comprehended it and the others haven't either. Let's seize the territory first. The comprehension of the heavenly Tao in the city is deeper and faster, but we have too few people. Still very troublesome. Last time we relied on you and Little Ting to deter others. This time it'll be even more difficult. Look at those groups that entered. There were at least 30 or 40 people. Chen Shui frowned and said, "You haven't fully comprehended the 3rd restriction, so we can't enter the palaces. It's fine if you're alone, but I'm afraid we'll have problems." This was indeed a problem. No matter how strong a person was, in the absence of a powerful true essence and psyche power, the limitation of pure physical strength was still very great. In the face of the temptation of ancient treasures and secret manuals, even the internal conflicts of the human race were quite tragic, let alone the foreign races. If they could quickly break into the palaces and enter, they wouldn't have to worry about being surrounded. But if they couldn't enter, Chen Hao could ensure his own safety, but he couldn't protect everyone present. This didn't mean they were weak, but that they had too few people. It was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. Once they fell into a chaotic battle, they would inevitably lose sight of one. Why don't we do this? Little Ting and I will go in and seize a large palace first. You 2 can cultivate in the periphery of the palace complex. It won't be long before I can open it. At that time Little Ting will take you 2 over. Chen Hao pondered for a moment and thought of a compromise. Everyone felt that this was safer. They didn't have to worry about Chen Hao and Long Ting. Chen Hao's body would automatically evolve to the peak strength of the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing. Just by relying on this, he didn't have to fear being surrounded. Long Ting, who had comprehended the 2nd restriction, always had the advantage in terms of physical strength. Although she wasn't as freakish as Chen Hao, she was still extremely powerful among the human race. If she couldn't win, she could run. An hour later, everyone arrived in front of an ancient city that stretched as far as the eye could see. Majestic ancient energy and fragments of the heavenly Tao filled the void. The palaces that shone with a faint blue light like willow, the wisps were even more mysterious and profound. It felt as if they had walked into the graveyard of the ancient gods. To be precise, this was equivalent to the graveyard of the ancient gods. When the universe collapsed, all life in this universe, no matter how strong they were, couldn't survive. But they could rely on their powerful abilities to leave behind their indestructible wills and heavenly Tao laws. In the city, every palace could be considered the graveyard of an ancient almighty. In the first 2 levels, Chen Hao and the others had entered many palaces. Even the worst palace was left behind by at least a heavenly immortal expert. Moreover, the heavenly immortals of this world were far more powerful than the heavenly immortals of the vast universe galaxy. Look, the leader is Chen Hao. The largest palace we saw on the previous level was the one they obtained. Oh? He defeated Lu Fingnan's team? I can't see how strong he is. That's because you didn't see him. Lu Fingnan's team of 100 was brutally ravaged. At that time, Chen Hao was fierce. He went deep into the crowd alone and captured Lu Fengnan. He forced Lu Fingnan's team to retreat and occupied the palace. It's best if we don't provoke this person. Don't look at how there are only 9 of them. 4 of them are genius female disciples of the temple, and the other 2 are young men and women. They are both top geniuses of East Flow City and will definitely become temple disciples. As for that Chen Hao, although he isn't a temple disciple, his strength is terrifying to the extreme. It is said that when they were at the transmission point of their sect ruins, even Qin Lin was sent running away by him. Is that so? Then I think there will be a good show to watch. Just because we don't provoke them doesn't mean others will be afraid. They can at most be considered the strongest at your transmission point, but they definitely can't compare with ours. Our transmission point has Qin Lin and Moling treading snow together, forming a team of 300 people. No one dares to provoke them. Do you know who broke through the second of the 9 immortal sealing taboos first? Moling treading snow. Even now he still hasn't made a move. But the strength of his aura is absolutely far more terrifying than Chen Hao's. We'll definitely meet him in this area. Let's wait for a good show. As for the strongest palace in the core area, there's no need for us to think about it. It will definitely be occupied by Moling treading snow. There's nothing we can do. When we encounter these freaks, we can only give way. This is only the 3rd level, and the foreign races came all the way here just to show off. But after another 2 or 3 levels, we'll automatically meet them. At that time it will be even more cruel. Let's wait here for a few more days. Let's gather our teams and increase our strength first. Let's look at the situation. If things really don't work out, we might as well join Moling treading snow's team. Don't. If we stay with them, we'll just be drinking soup. As long as it isn't a life or death situation, we absolutely cannot stay with them. After Chen Hao and the others entered the city through the wide city gates, they saw a group of over 40 people sitting cross-legged near the city gates. 2 leaders of the temple disciples were discussing in low voices. Chapter 701. Chen Hao realized that compared to the previous 2 forbidden cities, the cultivators in this city were much stronger. He had seen some of them before, but most of them he had never seen before. Moreover, most of the teams had more people. Gathering in groups to display the strength of a team would become more important towards the end. Of course, there were also solo cultivators and Dao companions, but these were the minority. Moreover, only a few of these people dared to enter the core of the city to fight for territory. Let's stay here. When they went deeper and passed by a row of smaller palaces, Qin Shui looked at the few cultivators around her and said, "You guys be careful too. There are even more experts on this level. Our area involves at least 10 armies." Chen Hao and Long Ting responded and went deeper. They knew very well that as they went deeper, the competition in the city's forbidden zones would become more and more intense. The only reason it was still mild now was that they had not really encountered a foreign army. Once the density reached a certain level, it was inevitable that the city's forbidden zones would become fierce battlefields. Ancient palaces were shrouded in dense mist. The sky was gray and the heavenly Dao laws were everywhere. After the 9 immortal sealing restrictions were broken in one breath, the entire area of the 9 immortal sealing restrictions became chaotic. Every level of the city's forbidden zones became the best and quickest place for people to break through and comprehend. There was no doubt that the 3rd forbidden zone was the place with the densest and most complete fragments of the heavenly Dao laws. As long as they completely understood the 3rd restriction, they would be able to form the corresponding runes and open the treasures of any palace. "Brother Hao, it's about time. After going deeper for dozens of kilometers, the two of them had already reached the core of the city. The circular palaces that were arranged in all directions also became more and more magnificent. At this moment 16 palaces formed a circle, and at the core was the tallest and largest palace that was like a mountain. Long Ting knew that the core palace would be a place that all the teams would fight for. In Long Ting's opinion, it was not very possible for the two of them to snatch it. Yes, let them fight for the core palace for now. Of these 16 palaces, we'll take one first. If anyone dares to open their eyes, I don't mind killing them. Don't. Just intimidate him. With the command medallion in our possession, every move we make here will be recorded. If we kill our own clansmen without sufficient reason, the Divine Temple will definitely punish us. You've seen it for yourself during the last two fights. No matter how unreasonable a person is, they would at most be crippled. Big brother, how I feel more and more that this 9 restrictions of immortal bestowment area is too different from the holy lands of training and tempering in the records. This is like a dead end that forces everyone onto a path of slaughter. In the end, I wonder how many people will be buried here. Yes, this is no longer a pure training ground for the 9 restrictions celestial bestowments. There's no training ground that would gather all the treasures in a single city. Every single palace here is a treasure trove. Moreover, once someone obtains it, the palace will vanish into thin air. Moreover, when you think about the eternal will within the palace, it's not difficult to deduce that these palaces, or perhaps the entire city, were formed by an ancient mighty figure using a great ability. Apart from the primordial spiritual treasures and secret manuals that we obtained that were real, everything else we saw was fake. This is equivalent to selecting an inheritor. So you're not wrong when you say it's a path of slaughter. If you want to obtain even more formidable magic treasures and secret manuals, then you have to step on ghastly white bones to advance. I've thought of this since a long time ago. I won't take the initiative to start a slaughter, but if someone dares to open their eyes, then I don't mind starting a slaughter first. This is something that will happen sooner or later. The level of ferocity in the end might far exceed our expectations. Qin Hao spoke with a calm expression. Qin Hao had never been afraid when facing competition. After he comprehended his own Tao and returned to his true self, the Tao of nature, Qin Hao clearly understood that the Tao of nature wasn't to have no desires, nor was it to stand aloof from the world. It was to maintain a calm heart of an expert and face everything. It's really cruel. Fighting and killing is too boring. I haven't rested for a long time. Long Ting said. Due to the uniqueness of this girl's cultivation method, the way she grew up was different from the majority of cultivators. Even though she had adapted for a period of time in the Divine Temple, she couldn't change the habits that she had cultivated since she was young. She couldn't stand up when she could sit, and she couldn't sit when she could sleep. Having delicious spirit fruits was better than anything else. But ever since she came to the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing, under Qin Hao's coercion, she had no choice but to work hard. This was undoubtedly the most painful thing for her. Fortunately, it was Qin Hao. If it had been anyone else, they probably wouldn't have been able to subdue this girl. But it had to be said that Long Ting's talent and comprehension were extremely heaven-defying. She was only second to Qin Hao among the 9 cultivators when she was forced to do so. If this girl became interested and put in 100% of her effort, she wouldn't pale in comparison to Qin Hao. Moreover, every time she broke through a limit, her physical strength would increase to an extremely terrifying level. Her current combat strength was absolutely not something that Qin Shui, the 2 sisters, and the others could compare to. Otherwise, Qin Hao wouldn't have brought her in alone. It's good that you're used to it. Cultivate in front of this palace. The way to break through the 3rd restriction as soon as possible is the way to go. If you can break through before me, you'll get the biggest share of the pills and spirit fruits this time. Qin Hao tempted with a faint smile. Out of the way. Out of the way. In less than 4 hours after Qin Hao and the others immersed themselves in cultivation, more and more cultivators poured into the city from the huge entrance. It was obvious that after sensing that the 9 restrictions of immortal sealing had been broken one after another, they were all making their way to the 3rd restriction as quickly as possible. Groups of powerful cultivators released their auras. As soon as they entered the city, they demonstrated their strength and dominance. It was normal for cultivators to fight for this place. Those who were weaker could only avoid them even if they were dissatisfied. Brother Moling? Nice to meet you. I didn't expect you to come in as well. The two groups, each consisting of 100 people, met at the city gate. In one of the groups, a young man with an imposing appearance and an unruly aura was surrounded by a crowd. After seeing the leader of the other group, a trace of seriousness flashed across his eyes, and he immediately revealed a trace of a rare smile as he called out to the leader of the other group. Moling Takshi's white clothes were purer than snow. His long black hair was scattered behind his back. His figure, which was clearly not very tall and appeared somewhat cultured and refined, was actually emitting a wild and arrogant aura at this moment. Those bright star-like eyes gave one a kind of cold, determined and fierce feeling, just like a wolf king. Moling Takshu immediately frowned slightly when he heard the other party take the initiative to greet him. He immediately revealed a smile and said, "It is indeed a pleasure to meet you. It seems that there are a few legions in the third restricted area. I just don't know how many legions there are. But no matter how many there are, I, Bai Yan, will fight for the core palace." Bai Yan was one of the top experts in the Earth's celestial stage of the Divine Temple and one of the 50 commanders. He was ranked 9th among the disciples in the Earth's celestial stage of the Divine Temple, one rank higher than Moling Takshu. "Same to you," Moling Takshu said lightly without any hesitation. After that he ignored them and walked in quickly. Bai Yan's group also strode forward. The battle hadn't started yet, but under the calm appearance there was a smell of gunpowder. The leaders of both groups were calm and relaxed, but the cultivators under them were staring fiercely at the other group and rubbing their palms. "This is going to be interesting. I didn't expect Bai Yan to come too. Commander, is Bai Yan very powerful?" "Nonsense, he dares to challenge Moling Takshu. How can he not be powerful?" In the Earth's celestial stage of the Divine Temple, Bai Yan is ranked 9th, one rank higher than Moling Takshu. However, this was the ranking before they came. Both of them got their positions by challenging the top 10 experts and didn't fight. It's hard to say who's stronger and who's weaker. If there are no accidents, the core palace here will definitely be obtained by the two of them. Even the 16 palaces in the second circle have nothing to do with us. Damn it, after passing this stage, we'd rather spend 10 days to half a month running to a city area further away. As long as we don't encounter foreign tribes, it's still possible for us to get into the second group. This is a fucking group of death. 50 commanders and now only 2 of the top 10 have appeared. How can they let others? Fuck, it can't be, right? Just as this disciple was complaining gloomily, a group appeared at the city gate, neither too fast nor too slow, causing this guy to widen his eyes and mouth. "What a sexy and beautiful woman. Ha, Commander, you're drooling." Smack. Without any warning, the disciple who was widening his eyes and mouth slapped the back of the young man's head. "Fuck, do you want to die? Keep your voice down." At this time, without the commander saying anything, the cultivators beside him were already scared silly. Fuck, that sexy and beautiful woman walked lightly, her beautiful eyes looking around. After she entered the city leisurely, there was a long tail behind her. In an instant, there were already more than 100 people in sight, but it was as if there was no end, and they continued to swarm in continuously. Not to mention how powerful the sexy beauty was, just the number of people in the group was enough to scare people to death. At this moment, everyone was as silent as cicadas in winter. They stared blankly at the group that entered in a single file. They looked at that enchanting and seductive back, then counted the number of people who entered in a single file. When there were about 300 people, they finally reached the end. It was only when the sexy beauties group gradually moved further away and was about to disappear from everyone's sight that they realized that there were actually 30 temple disciples following behind the sexy beauty. It was not their fault that their eyes were not bright. It was just that the sexy beauty was too dazzling, so dazzling that it made all the cultivators within 100 feet of her lose their luster. As long as they looked at that figure, they would ignore everyone else around them. What did I just see? Oh my god. Humain Yang. It must be Humain Yang. What a powerful and terrifying group. Humain Yang. She is Humain Yang? Not only were the non-temple disciples shocked, but even the temple disciples were shocked. Chapter 702. Humain Yang was only at the Earth's celestial stage, but she was already a legendary figure in the Divine Temple. She was a peerless woman who ranked first in the vast universe galaxy's preliminary test. To most of the Divine Temple's genius disciples, she was rarely seen. Even during the special training before entering the primitive mystic realm, she did not appear. She did not participate in any of the Divine Temple's ranking competitions. Similarly, she did not hold any position in the primitive mystic realm. This was definitely not because she was a loner. It was because she befriended the Divine Temple's top geniuses. In the Divine Temple, when she occasionally appeared, she was usually with the Heaven's celestial stage geniuses. It was rumored that countless top geniuses had fallen for her. Although her combat strength was not on par with the Earth's celestial stage geniuses, no one dared to underestimate her. How could someone who could train with the Heaven's celestial stage geniuses be weak? This Hu Mainyang is indeed a natural seductress. Her peerless charm is unparalleled. Hu Mainyang is not just a natural seductress. It is said that she is the strongest saintess of the Misty Rain Tower in the past 100,000 years. She opened the Misty Rain Tower's ancestral inheritance that no one had opened for nearly 1,000,000 years and learned the lost Red Dust Heart Sutra. It can't be? Isn't the Red Dust Heart Sutra something that can only be cultivated by the innate Taoist embryo? That's why I said she's not just a natural seductress. I see. No wonder the Divine Temple's top geniuses want to befriend her. Whoever gets her will gain immeasurable benefits, not to mention the potential alliance. That's for sure. Other than the top geniuses of the top 10 sects, I'm afraid no one will catch her eye. Not only must they be talented and powerful, but they must also have a powerful background to meet the Misty Rain Tower's standards. In fact, although we can't get in touch with her, the top 10 Earth celestial stage geniuses are often invited by her. Let's go and take a look. I believe Bai Yen and Moling Takshu will not compete with her. At most they will enter the core palace with her. Even if a legion commander comes, it won't cause any trouble. Let's see if we can join her team. Let's disband our team. Following her will definitely be more rewarding than leading a team alone. Even if the reward is not great, it's a pleasure to be able to see this peerless genius. That was exactly what he was thinking. No matter what, we are disciples of the Divine Temple. How can we not compare to the ordinary cultivators in their team? Let's go. Hu Mainyang's appearance caused an uproar among the surrounding cultivators. Some of the disciples of the temple chose to follow her, while others felt that no matter what, they had to leave this place. This was definitely a group of death. Following such a group of ferocious people would only bring them soup. Of course, most of these people were the stronger cultivators of the temple. Their strength was average and they were just there to buy soy sauce wherever they went, so they had an indifferent attitude. Following such experts was not a bad thing. Most importantly, when they encountered the foreign army later on, they could also seek some protection. After going through the first 2 stages, everyone realized that this was a path of killing and seizing treasures. Even though they knew it was dangerous, it was hard to stop them. Even if they wanted to drink soup, they had to rush to the end to take a look. At least it was better than staying where they were. When Hu Mainyang passed by the area where Qin Shui and the sisters were, it also caused Qin Shui and the others to be shocked. It was not because of Hu Mainyang's peerless beauty. She came from the Misty Rain Tower, was born with a natural charm, and cultivated the Red Dust Heart Sutra that only the founder of the Misty Rain Tower could cultivate. Her true body was definitely a beauty that could bring disaster to a country. However, in the eyes of Qin Shui and the other women, it was completely different from in the eyes of men. Especially for a peerless beauty like Qin Shui, at most, it was a sign of surprise. But in the eyes of men it was very different. Qin Shui and the others were only surprised by the size of the team. It was not yet time to fight with the foreign army. How could such a large team be formed? But soon Qin Shui and the other cultivators who were surprised by the size of the team discovered that most of the cultivators walking behind Hu Mainyang were following her on their own accord. This was because many disciples from the Holy Temple were red in the face. They walked to Hu Mainyang's side and recommended themselves with trembling voices. However, they were all rejected with a smile. What was even more surprising was that even if they were rejected, they did not leave and continued to follow behind Hu Mainyang. What made them even more speechless was that they were fighting for the position behind Hu Mainyang. The power of the Red Dust Heart Sutra and the Red Dust Heart Sutra was obvious. If not for the fact that everyone knew that this was not a seduction technique to confuse people's hearts, they would have avoided her from afar. This would not affect anyone's Tao heart, but it could subtly conquer your heart. Even if they knew the result, they would still follow her and gladly endure it. Strange. After a brief moment of shock, Qin Shui looked at Hu Meinyang again. Hu Meinyang moved gracefully but was not slow at all. After taking a closer look and sensing her, Qin Shui frowned slightly. Sister Shui, are these people's minds bewitched? Feels strange. Leng Ninglu asked softly when she saw Qin Shui frowning at the woman. However, Qin Shui did not seem to hear her. Sister Shui. Yes. You guys stay here. I'll go take a look. Qin Shui came back to her senses. Her figure flashed and she quickly turned to the blind spot between the two palaces. A mysterious aura fluctuation flashed around her body, and her graceful and exquisite figure underwent a shocking change. Her blue dress casually pulled at her waist and chest a few times, and it turned into a blue Taoist robe. At the same time, a blue silk scarf appeared in her hand and she tied up her hair. Little Shui, what are you doing? Venerable Immortal Han Mei followed behind her and asked. Mother, she has the Red Dust Heart Sutra and cultivated a powerful seduction technique. Don't worry, I won't do anything rash. Qin Shui lowered her voice and said. Are you sure? I'm sure. That aura can't be wrong. Venerable Immortal Han Mei frowned when she heard Qin Shui's words. Her heart felt as if it was being cut by a knife, and her eyes were instantly filled with tears. Unfortunately, she was clearly very sad, but she did not know why she was sad. She had personally extracted a memory from the past and condensed it into a soul crystal. That was the most painful memory, a memory that pierced through the heart. Even though it had been extracted from her soul and should have been free of it at this moment, when she wanted to capture something, it inexplicably affected her. Mother. When Qin Shui saw her mother become like this, tears immediately appeared in her eyes and she grabbed her mother's hand. Mother's fine. If it wasn't for the fact that I wanted to live a few more years and was afraid of losing too much cultivation, I should have erased all memories related to him. Mother, I didn't understand before, but now I understand. When you condensed a soul crystal, How had already given it to him. He saw it, so why was he so heartless and not looking for you? The past that even Qin Shui had almost forgotten or was unwilling to recall once again made Qin Shui feel intense hatred and dissatisfaction towards the father she had never met before. Especially when she thought that everything that happened to her and the other girls might have been arranged by that heartless father, she felt even more hatred. Don't blame him. After all, he is your father. Moreover, the soul crystal I condensed back then shattered my memories. I only wanted to tell him that we would never meet again. If he dares to treat me like that, then I dare. Venerable Han Mei's eyes flashed with a fierceness that Qin Shui had never seen before. However, when she spoke until here, her face suddenly turned pale and cold sweat dripped down. Even her voice became extremely weak, but she still insisted, Mother only has one request for you. Find a way to let Qin Hao subdue that innate Tao embryo. Mother, why do you want to do this? Mother doesn't know. In short, subduing him is helping Mother. Venerable Han Mei endured the intense pain from the depths of her soul and said. Just a few words almost caused her soul to collapse. Mother, don't ask Mother. There are many things that Mother can't say and don't know. I know you will doubt Mother's identity and Mother will doubt myself. Most of the time, it is the subconscious that controls everything. But you have to believe that Mother is right. Venerable Han Mei said strenuously. Her eyes even became pleading. Qin Shui looked at her mother's painful appearance and pleading eyes. At this moment, the hatred towards father suddenly disappeared. What was left was only confusion. Everything in front of her seemed to become illusory. Her mother was clearly in front of her, but it seemed to be very far away. She wanted to see clearly, but it was like looking at flowers in the fog. In her heart, it was as if a huge heavy mountain was pressing down on her, making her feel that it was unbearably heavy. Promise Mother, okay? Venerable Han Mei's weak voice sounded absent-minded. Qin Shui nodded a little numbly. She immediately threw everything aside and turned away. Of all virtues, filial piety was the most important. She had heard about the innate Tao embryo from her mother because it was related to her. She was nurtured by her mother through heaven-defying means for 162 years. But now she still couldn't be compared to the innate Tao embryo. Only when she surpassed the heavenly immortal realm and stepped into the Daoyuo golden wonderland, could she become a true innate Tao embryo. The innate Tao embryo resonated with the myriad Tao and was doted on by the myriad Tao. If it was a true innate Tao embryo, the cultivation speed and talent would undoubtedly increase by leaps and bounds. However, this kind of person didn't pursue speed. Instead, they always suppressed their own realm and purposely gave themselves more time to cultivate a solid state of mind. This would lay the foundation for them to reach a higher realm after stepping into the Grand Mist Supremacy realm. As for Qin Shui, who was nurtured by heaven-defying means and could only become a true innate Tao embryo in the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland, she wouldn't lose her innate talent. On the contrary, her state of mind would be better. When she sensed the aura of Hu Mainyang's innate Tao embryo, she wanted to go over and take a look. She knew how terrifying the innate Tao embryo was. Especially Hu Mainyang, who was identified by Qin Shui as a woman who cultivated a peerless seduction technique. She was even more terrifying. She was worried that Qin Hao would be bewitched like those cultivators who followed her. Similarly, even if Qin Hao wasn't bewitched, she was worried that Qin Hao's personality would conflict with hers. Moreover, not long ago she saw Qin Lin following another expert like an underling, walking towards the core area. Qin Shui didn't know this fake disciple of the Divine Temple, but she heard the discussions of other cultivators. She knew that the master was called Moling Takshu, one of the top 10 Earth Immortals in the Divine Temple. She naturally knew that Moling Takshu was the commander of their army. She also heard from Long Ting that it was the sect that Bailey Ningbing belonged to. However, even so, she didn't go over. She was afraid of causing trouble and believed that Qin Hao could handle it. But now, with the appearance of the innate Tao embryo, Qin Shui had no choice but to go. However, she didn't expect her mother to give her such a mission. Chapter 703. Qin Shui was depressed and confused. Although she had promised her mother, she did not know what to do at this moment. Let her man conquer a woman? For any woman, this was an extremely painful thing. More importantly, her mother just now was unfamiliar to her. Qin Shui did not know what kind of secret was hidden in that flash of a sharp gaze that she had never seen before. Her mother, her father whom she had never met, and her mother's twin sister, what kind of existence were they? What did they have to do with each other? What kind of existence was Hu Mainyang with her innate Taoist fetus? What was the relationship between her mother and the others? Qin Shui could not figure it out and could not understand. He felt vaguely uneasy. She had promised her mother, but what should she do? She did, would it be right or wrong? Sigh. Suddenly, a heavy sigh sounded in Qin Shui's mind. Who is it? Qin Shui, who had just bypassed the palace, stopped abruptly and stood rooted to the ground. All of his consciousness was sucked into his mind by a mysterious force. Don't be nervous, it's me. Senior? Or, are you? Hearing the other person's reply, Qin Shui immediately recognized the familiar voice. It was the mysterious senior who had occasionally appeared to guide her during the years she was under house arrest. In your mind, it's just a wisp of my primordial spirit. You? Qin Shui looked at the gradually clear image of the senior in her mind and was speechless. She had seen him many times, but she had never seen his face. Now she finally saw it clearly. She had thought that they would meet one day, but she did not expect to meet him like this. My daughter. Don't blame your father, you will understand in the future. Following Qin Hai's words, Qin Shui's mind was shrouded in a dazzling and mysterious light. There was a brief moment of blankness. Everything that had just happened with her mother did not leave any trace in Qin Shui's mind. Only a moment later, Qin Shui suddenly sobered up. It was as if her mind had suddenly wandered and she had forgotten what she was thinking. Qin Shui shook her head. Holding on to her initial worries and thoughts about Qin Hao, she unhurriedly followed Hu Mainyang and the huge group that followed behind her. Qin Lin? Moling Takshu? Qin Hao sat cross-legged in front of one of the 16 massive palaces around the core palace. His entire being seemed to have become one with the world as he continued to comprehend the final stages of the third hex. Long Ting, who was guarding him, sat cross-legged beside him leisurely. The sound of footsteps attracted her attention. What Long Ting did not expect was to see Qin Lin and Moling Takshu, who had once helped Bailey Ningbing snatch the sacred artifact from her. Not good, Long Ting frowned slightly. If it were anyone else it would be fine, but these two were enemies on a narrow road. Not to mention Moling Takshu, even Qin Lin, who had been humiliated by Qin Hao, would probably have to rely on his current power to get back at him. It's them. Sure enough, in just an instant, Chen Hao and Long Ting entered everyone's line of sight. It couldn't be helped. So far, only Chen Hao and Long Ting had occupied one of the entrances of the core palace and the 16 second palaces. It was truly eye-catching. When Qin Lin saw the two of them, he also revealed a trace of surprise. Then his eyes flashed with sharpness and viciousness. He turned his head and whispered a few words to Moling Takshu, who was walking in the middle. He was calm and collected, as if he did not care about anything. He only stared at Moling Takshu, who was the largest palace in the core, and frowned slightly. Then he looked at Long Ting and Chen Hao. In the end, his gaze locked onto Chen Hao, who was cultivating. After a full 2 seconds, he gave an order and no longer paid attention to him. Qin Lin snorted coldly in the direction of Long Ting and Chen Hao. His eyes were contemptuous. He turned his head and did not say anything for the time being. His expression showed that he did not take Chen Hao and Long Ting seriously at all. Brother Moling, how about we decide the victor in one battle? The winner will obtain the core palace and 8 of the 16 palaces. Whoever comes later will work together. I don't think anyone will dare to fight for it. Bai Yan stood with his hands behind his back. He stopped and said with a confident smile. The two sides, with Bai Yan and Moling Takshu in the lead, formed a situation where they faced each other on the left and right. At this moment, without waiting for Moling Takshu to reply, a dense crowd appeared at the back of the huge main road. Ah! No one knew who was the first to discover it and cried out in surprise. Then everyone sucked in a cold breath and looked behind. Even Moling Takshu and Bai Yan were no exception. Their expressions changed instantly. This scene was extremely strange. They were thousands of meters away. Under the 9 seals of immortality, although their senses were poor, there was no reason for them not to be able to sense any movement. They only discovered it now because the dense crowd behind them was too quiet. No one made a sound. They clustered around a sexy and graceful figure advancing slowly. There were only small and light footsteps. Hu Meinyang? Moling Takshu and Bai Yan frowned at first, then their brows relaxed. Their eyes shone with a bright light at the same time. They stared blankly at Hu Meinyang, who was leisurely approaching like an immortal and made the world lose its color. The two groups that had been aggressive just now all widened their eyes at this moment. They stared straight at the huge group behind them. Although the vast majority of people did not know who had come, no one was not shocked by Hu Meinyang's figure. Of course, the vast majority of people were even more shocked by the huge group behind Hu Meinyang. Then as Hu Meinyang approached, everyone's gazes were attracted. No matter if it was young men, middle-aged men, or even the elderly, they all stared blankly at Hu Meinyang. It was as if Hu Meinyang's smiling figure was the only thing left in the world. What happened? Long Ting, who was at the innermost corner, was also shocked by the strange appearance of Moling Takshu and the others. Could it be that someone even more powerful has come? Long Ting thought to herself. She looked at Chen Hao, who was still immersed in comprehension, and shook her head. She could sense that Chen Hao had completely integrated into the law of heaven. She believed that in a few days he would be able to break through the 3rd hex and open the palace. She also did not encounter any strong competition. However, the situation this time was far beyond Long Ting's expectations. However, Long Ting felt strange in her heart. She had not seen the person who had come, so there was no doubt that it was a powerhouse. Otherwise, Moling Takshu and Bai Yan would not have such expressions. However, everyone was either dazed or silent. It was too strange. Miss Hu, I didn't expect to meet you here. Bai Yan took a step forward to welcome her. His expression, eyes, and tone seemed to have changed in an instant. There was undisguised excitement and adoration in his eyes. Miss Hu, it's a pleasure to meet you. Moling Takshu frowned and glanced at Bai Yan. She also smiled and went forward to welcome her, not to be outdone. Both of them were young geniuses in the top 10 of the Earth celestial stage and knew Hu Meinyang. They had been won over by Hu Meinyang long ago and had endless fantasies about her. Brother Bai, Brother Moling, nice to meet you. Hu Meinyang smiled and glanced at the two of them with her bright eyes. Miss Hu, these people are... Bai Yan looked at the countless young cultivators behind Hu Meinyang and asked. Meinyang is alone. Don't follow me. Hu Meinyang smiled slightly. Her voice was obviously charming, but it gave people a feeling of emptiness. It was very pleasant to the ears. Hearing Hu Meinyang's words, Moling Takshu and Bai Yan were relieved at the same time. That's easy. Miss Hu, when I win the ownership of the core palace, I will invite Miss Hu together. Moling Taxia said first. Humph. Do you have that ability? Bai Yen frowned and looked at Moling Taxia provocatively. Then he looked at Hu Mainyang and said, Miss Hu, as long as you like it, the core palace and the 16 halls are all yours. I believe that none of the friends here have any objections, right? I, Bai Yen, will be the first to protect you, Miss Hu. You. Moling Taxia was so angry at Bai Yen that she vomited blood. Brother Bai, you're too serious. Mainyang only needs to enter the core palace. Since both of you are allowing Mainyang to enter, then Mainyang will go first. No one expected Hu Mainyang to say this. After she finished speaking, she cupped her fists slightly at Moling Taxia and Bai Yen. Then she walked toward the core palace with light steps that seemed slow but was actually fast. Before she arrived, Hu Mainyang's body suddenly shone with a tricolored light. In an instant, the surrounding heavenly Tao law and the energy of heaven and earth fluctuated violently. In an instant, a tricolored pillar of light shrouded the door of the core palace. Rumble. The door opened with a rumble. Hu Mainyang entered directly and disappeared in a flash. It's open. Go in. No one expected Hu Mainyang, who had just arrived, to have already comprehended the third hex and opened the door directly. At this moment, the cultivators who had been following Hu Mainyang wanted to follow her without hesitation. All of you stop right there. If you don't want to die, scram. Moling Taxia and Bai Yen shouted almost at the same time. They were shocked by Hu Mainyang's terror. However, if they allowed everyone to enter at this time, what would happen? There was no need for discussion. The two of them agreed without prior consultation. The members of their team also tried to surround and stop them. However, although no one provoked them verbally, the huge crowd attacked directly. The law could not punish the masses. Moreover, Moling Taxia and Bai Yen were not the law. How could they stop hundreds of thousands of people? You're courting death. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, a chaotic battle broke out. However, there were too many people rioting. How could they stop them? In an instant, the door of the core palace was crushed. Countless people rushed in. Although Moling Taxia and Bai Yen were enraged, it was already impossible for them to obtain the core treasure by themselves now. Don't stop them. Charge in. Almost at the same time, the two of them gave the order and rushed into the palace in a flash. The treasures that appeared on the second floor of the core palace were ancient supreme-grade spirit treasures. If there were no surprises, there should be a primordial divine artifact treasure on this floor. How could they give it up? You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.